welcome back to Cast Me to Hell with me, Seb.
And with me, Robbie.
And this week we go with our namesake of a film, as you might call it. Let's say horror that maybe inspired our title, but it's an odd one in our choice.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? It's not exactly a film that we're massively huge on, is it? It just happened to line up really well with a podcast name.
Yeah, it did. It was a long kind of trek. So as we're coming to this film, and as hopefully you can already guess, we'll tell you in a second. But we're coming to this film because we're thinking about the fact we're coming up to our 100th ever episode.
Yeah.
And we're thinking a little bit reflectively on the past as we hit 100, and we're thinking about how we came to be.
Yeah, how we formed.
We're having our life, or we don't know how long it'll go on for. I was going to say midlife crisis, but we don't know how long. How long we'll be around.
Yeah,
this might be end of life.
It might be. We might both die as soon as this is aired.
At the end of this episode, this will never be released. So, the film we are discussing, if you can't already guess from our podcast name, and you may never have thought about it, to be fair, but it is Drag Me to Hell.
Yeah, we're doing a little Sam Raimi's kind of return to horror after directing Spider-Man.
Yeah, the Spider-Man trilogy, and then he threw this one out there.
Yeah.
And he hasn't really done a lot. He's done a lot of producing, but he hasn't really done much in terms of horror.
Not directing.
No, not directing.
I can't think of what his last film that he directed was.
Doctor Strange.
Oh yeah, it would be Doctor Strange.
Yeah, but in terms of horror, I mean that had horror elements, obviously. But apart from horror, him directing a horror, I don't know. I don't think he's done another horror that he's directed since. He's barely directed anything since, to be fair. So Drag Me to Hell and Cast Me to Hell. Now, I feel like we've probably mentioned this before at some point in time. Maybe when we did our year in review or 1 year of Cast Me to Hell. But obviously, when you're coming to do a podcast, the name is obviously quite important. It's quite a catchy thing. And I remember us talking about this. How long ago was that now? Was it 2020 we started?
It was 2020 we decided to do it.
Yeah, 2020, and our first episode went out in August 2020, I think. So yeah, June, July of 2020, mid still living in pandemic times.
Yeah, it was, wasn't it?
And we were still working out, and we had a pretty much constant back and forth. And I don't even know if my phone would scroll back that far. So I did think about scrolling back, but I don't even know if my phone would go back that far in messages. But we had a constant back and forth of what could our podcast be called? What could the names be? We had a constant random list coming out.
Yeah.
Some of which are names of other podcasts. Some of which are names of other podcasts that have arrived since we actually had formed. So we would have been ahead of that one we had. And some of them are I think something like night. I think the one that got the closest, and it was only because we realised that basically around the same time another podcast had released the same kind of one, and we didn't realise it at the time. Yeah. But Nightmare on Pod Street or Nightmare on something like that, or Nightmare on Film Street. Or
there was a
and
place
then we were
there's
another podcast called that, or I feel like ours was different, so I can't remember exactly what the difference is. There is a podcast out there called Nightmare on Film Street.
Yeah, there is Nightmare on Film Street.
Yeah, but we didn't actually realise that one was there already. Again, I think at that time that was a fairly newly established one as well. But we didn't realise that existed already. But ours wasn't exactly the same. But we're like, well, we can't have another one that's that close together.
Yeah. That's it.
And then I think we had Dawn of the Pod or something like that.
Something like that. Yeah, there were a lot of those. Night of the Living Pod.
Yeah, Night of the Living Podcast or something like that. Yeah, Night of the Living Podcast. That was the one that came closest. I think.
Yeah, that
Night
was
of the Living Podcast was the
Night
one.
of the Talking Dead.
Night of the Talking Dead.
But then there was the Talking Dead pod.
Walking Dead one. The Walking Dead's. Yeah,
we don't want to get sued before we start, you know.
Yeah, I think Night of the Living Podcast was the one that got the closest to being like we're gonna go with that one.
Yeah.
But there was something that just didn't sound quite right to it, and we were talking through it, and and then it was at Discount Pod, the pot from Discount Podcast, Josh, who's actually the one who gave us our name technically. He threw it out there. We were basically doing like a list of names, and I had a random conversation, like basically because he'd already set up a podcast, so I was asking basically, what the fuck do I do? Yeah. How do we do this? We had the idea without any knowledge of how we even set up what we even really need.
Yeah.
So we were, and we had conversations with our friend Dan about like helping to set up the podcast and stuff like that. And we were just throwing out names, but like I was just throwing out some of the random names, and then I think Josh sent me like a list of like off the top of his head, because that's just the way the brain works, just basically like a list of like random ones that you could use. I was looking through it and I was like, cast me to hell.
it rolls off the tongue, doesn't it?
It sounded good, and it had nothing to do with this film.
No.
It had nothing to do with the love of this film. I just liked the name Cast Me to Hell, and even, to be honest, even when I read it at first I was like, Cast Me to Hell, that's cool. It's not really related to a film. And then I was like, and then after that, and I think it was when I sent it to you, and then you were like, like Drag Me to Hell. I was like, oh shit.
Yeah.
I was like, I completely forgot that film existed. So yeah, this film has basically nothing to do with the creation. So if you're thinking that we're like two people who are like huge fans of Drag Me to Hell, yeah, this film had nothing to do really with the creation of that title in our head.
I don't know if we've ever actually spoken about this film.
I don't. Outside of the fact that we briefly mentioned the name,
maybe.
And I think I might have mentioned before. So, like, my relationship with this film is I've seen it once before. Yeah. Before I rewatched it for this, I've seen it once in the cinema, and I remember being like, "That was okay. Like that was fine. It was okay. It was enjoyable. I had some good set pieces, but I remember leaving the cinema being a bit like, yeah. But also because, and I think there was a little bit of part of me, also because that was the point of when there was a big trend of your 12A PG-13 horrors. Yeah. And I thought that most of them were shit. And I thought this one was better than others, but still I didn't love it at the time. And I don't remember who I was with. I was definitely with someone else, and I remember leaving. It might have been Josh.
Maybe, yeah.
To be fair, I don't know. He might have been in America at that point. But I just remember leaving someone and be like, yeah, it was alright. it didn't like, I was like, there was some cool part, but mainly that was alright. And we'll delve more into what I feel about it now that I've re-seen it. But how about you? What's your relationship with this film?
It's relatively similar. So I remember watching it when it first came out, or shortly after, on DVD. I've been really conscious of the way I say DVD recently, because I've just noticed that that's one word I almost say with a real West Country accent, like DVD. So I've been really conscious about it recently.
Trying to pronounce it. The DVD.
DVD.
Pronounce it correctly.
DVD. Dovda. Yeah, on Dovda. And I watched it shortly after it had been released. Really enjoyed it, and remember being grossed out quite a lot. And I rewatching it, I still do. And then I rewatched it relatively recently. I think it was on Netflix, and it's definitely been this year that I've watched it. And I remember really enjoying it. However, then when I watched it this time for the podcast, I found myself not enjoying it as much as I originally did, and less to do with the content of the film and more to do with some of the stuff that we're probably going to talk about later, the little convo we had before we hit record. But I guess before we get into it, as always, if you've enjoyed the show, or if you're a fan of the show, remember to hit that subscribe button. Saying on our Fright Night episode, which if you haven't watched or listened to, go and check it out. We've nearly hit 100 followers on Spotify, and we've nearly hit 50 on Apple Podcasts. So just a reminder to hit that subscribe button, and please leave us a lovely review. Now into Drag Me to Hell. Going straight into it, going in raw.
Yeah.
The one thing I do love, and this is something that I've put together quite recently, is I'm at work and I'm listening to a lot of horror movie soundtracks. And recently, I was listening to I keep wanting to say "Cast Me to Hell" music. I was listening to the "Drag Me to Hell" theme, and I noticed it is very similar to the Hellraiser theme. It's very orchestral.
Yeah, it does have. I did notice that. Yeah.
It has a lot of ebb and flow to it. It has some real highs and orchestral moments to it, and it's the same composer, Christopher Young.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's one thing I do like, because when I watched it back for the first time, I noticed that the soundtrack really fucked, and it was very high.
I really liked the orchestral parts of it, but I thought at certain parts that in the actual edit of the film, I can see how the soundtrack and stuff I would say are amazing, but in the edit of the film, I actually thought some of it felt so out of place.
Really?
Yeah, music wise, and there were also some choices. There was one bit in the. I'm just move for a second to talk about. We'll come back to it later. But in the garage, there was like one bit that really stuck out for me. The orchestral, that kind of very Hellraiser-esque kind of thing, plays when she's in the garage scene, and it's very tense. But then, as it starts to get into the thing, we get kind of there's like almost guitar strings.
Yeah,
sound a little bit like like the kind of mix it like that kind of like that came into it. And tonally, it just completely because it sounded like humorous guitar strings almost. It sounded quite like in that kind of way, while you had this orchestral thing, which again tonally totally matches up with, say, a Sam Raimi kind of thing. Yeah. But for me, it just threw off a scene which actually felt quite tense, and then suddenly I was like, "Why is there this random fucking guitar? Like, why is this hillbilly kind of guitar solo kind of kicking in midway through?" And it really threw me off. Like, I loved that, like the orchestral part of it, but there were some like tone as if he's trying to. It's like it sounded a bit like when they tried to throw in those like slapsticky kind of like moments in, as if he was trying to add a layer of humour on top of the seriousness.
I mean, I didn't notice that, to be honest.
I don't know why. It just stuck out to me. I was just because obviously the music in that, I think especially in that garage scene, the music really kicks in quite heavily. And I don't know, maybe again if you rewatch again, you might notice it. But there was just this. I was like, why is that guitar like string suddenly kick? And there was a few other moments in the film I was like, this sounds awesome. And then it's like you seem to have thrown in this extra sound that just makes it sound really off to me. Yeah. And I kind of throw that out there because, to be honest, that's kind of that's also my thinking on this film a little bit. The idea of like we have this serious and then we have this really other tone, which is completely Sam Raimi, it's completely completely Sam Raimi, completely like this. It's just there's this shifting in structure and tone, which at times as I go into it, like there are lots of goods and lots of, but there are certain things in this film where I'm a little bit like, I don't really think it worked necessarily as well as it has for him in the past, maybe in his Evil Dead universe. And there's a little bit of a shift, and Evil Dead I think is a very important thing to reference here, because there's a lot of stuff in here where you could say that's basically out of the, that's basically the Deadites, or that's basically out of that universe. Yeah, it feels you could almost put it into that world. But then there's a lot of stuff that feels like it doesn't fit into that world. And it sometimes feels like you're mashing two different films together. And sometimes it really works, and some scenes it really doesn't work. I see what you mean. It's the tone of the film, and it's that I think we might have even said this when we did Evil Dead. It's that Sam Raimi isms, you know, in terms of how he shoots. The tone of his films are often very B-movie, relatively slapstick, and you sometimes you get a bit of a tonal inconsistency, or I think it's maybe you kind of have to be on the wavelength for it. Like recently, I messaged you the other day saying I watched *Malignant*, and I absolutely love *Malignant*. I thought it was incredible. It's giallo. If you like stuff like Argento. And a little bit of Fulci, then you'll really get it, because it's shot like it, it's acted like it, it's kind of written like it. It has that, Which might be why I heard so many people saying that they were thrown off by I've heard a lot of people saying that film was just odd, weird, because it is weird, or it was structurally odd, and that's kind of the reason why I bring that up is. I loved it because I'm a big fan of those. Yeah. And I think it's the same with Raimi films. Like, if you look at a lot of the camera work that he does, it's kind of... It's obviously he's
started to develop as a filmmaker. This is 30 years after Evil Dead, so he's definitely more budget. He's done that, but you can see the
more
DNA
effects, more if you link to obviously what he learned in Spider-Man. Almost has developed from Evil Dead, but some of that Evil Dead style is still
DNA is still there. In some of the shots
he has got a distinct. I will say that I think Sam Raimi has an auteur-like style.
Yeah, definitely.
You can specifically look at certain things and go, that's Raimi.
That's Raimi.
That's Raimi. And if you can do that with a film, and people say, oh yeah, you can do that. You can't do that with all directors. Only certain directors really have that auteur style that you're literally like, you look at it and go, I could spot you out of a crowd.
Yeah.
And certain directors don't. Certain directors are just direct. They can make good shots. They can make things like that, but it's not specifically them. It's almost ripped off from. It's like if I say Steven Spielberg, 100%. You can tell those shots. You can see those, but you can also see where he's taken them from, say Hitchcock or someone like that. Yeah. It's borrowed, but then some of it he started to develop his own. Whereas if you then look at a more modern one like J.J. Abrams, he basically just rips off Spielberg.
Yeah.
But not to the style of taking Hitchcock but then doing it your own stylistic way that becomes yours. He pretty much just rips off exact copies of whatever film. So I wouldn't say he's an auteur, but Spielberg is and Hitchcock is because they had their own style. And Raimi has that exact same. There are just certain shots, and whether you're watching Spider-Man, Evil Dead, or Drag Me to Hell, there's literally these close-up, like there's one when it closes up on her face and the background is kind of odd, you think that looks weird, but I was like, well, that exact same shot is in Spider-Man, and that exact same shot is in Evil Dead. It's exactly the same in all of his things, because it's just all that winding in kind of motion.
There was one in particular I was thinking of, which is kind of later in the film, and it's Christine's in the kitchen, and the camera itself is on a slight angle, and then as she walks past, it kind of leans back to follow her and kind of goes upside down, and that's kind of one of Raimi's things that he does. These awkward angles, and staying on them.
There is the follow.
Yeah,
there is a sentient following you kind of shot, of course, which Evil Dead, Spider-Man, even Doctor Strange, his newest one, they all had that same tracking shot in all of them because he loves that shot.
Oh yeah, but that's the thing I do respect about Raimi and auteurs is that even though they make these films that have massive budgets and massive money, they still are able to stick to the roots of the DNA of the filmmaking. They're not just making it like J.J. Abrams. I'm not saying he's a bad director, but he's very much like, this is what you want, this is what I'm going to deliver.
It's copy and paste.
Yeah, it's copy and
copy
paste.
And paste one, I mean? It was New Hope, Force Awakens. It was like you've done it, but you've tweaked it, but a lot of it looks exactly the same.
It's just standard safe
which
filmmaking.
Is fine. It is. It's safe filmmaking. It's not its own stuff. The only thing J.J. Abrams has is the fact that he always uses lens flare.
Yeah,
so
he does.
Freaking much.
So
that's his alternative is lens flare. But I wouldn't say that's one to brag about.
No.
But no. Sam Raimi, and this was a thought I even had in my notes. So Sam Raimi, I do think, because of that style, although his are popular, and he either has cult ones or he has ones that were a little bit more popular. But even as you saw with the Evil Dead, as the Evil Dead franchise has gone on, that it shows how much I think his style is an acquired taste.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So they're successful when they started, and they got less and less successful as they went along. Spider-Man doesn't count. Spider-Man's a totally different thing. Spider-Man's just that. But again, he's the one that laid the style that made it work. He found that perfect comic book balance between action, humour, and a little bit of cheese on the side.
Yeah.
He balanced it out. He's almost the first one to successfully do it. Technically, X-Men came before it, and Blade came before that as well. But I would say Blade didn't come perfect the balance. X-Men couldn't quite totally nail it in the first one, did in the second one. But the Spider-Man, even the first, and some people don't think the first one's better, but I love the first.
First one's awesome.
But yeah, he perfectly balanced that mixture of having that kind of character, that kind of humour, that kind of depth that it needed, while also not acting like it's silly itself.
Yeah, he played it well.
But he certainly has certain stylistic things that are. And even in those films, even in the Spider-Man films or Doctor Strange or in Evil Dead, I think that certain people are like, I don't really get that. I don't really get that kind of odd humour, cheesiness, or I don't get why you're being a little bit silly with it in this moment. Or there are just little things that sometimes people point out, and it's because they don't quite get his kind of
yeah.
style. But you know, he does have a kind of a tone that like kind of varies quite like quickly in his film. Like it can go from quite a serious moment to quite a humorous moment quite suddenly, or you can add an extra. There can be a little bit of like a silly or a cheesy, and then it's back to violent. And then it's a little bit silly and cheesy, and it's back to, you know, I mean, it can be a bit jarring at time. The thing is, I've kind of found is like he is great. He is amazing at shooting horror. He is amazing at shooting horrific, graphic, violent kind of scenes that are also can still oddly sometimes even feel light-hearted when they're like graphic and things like that. But I do think that one thing I do find about Sam Raimi is though he's not great at structure. I don't think his films are structured that well. I think they do sometimes feel a bit all over the place. They do sometimes feel like shots are just kind of thrown in there at times. Like Spider-Man is why I said originally that I want not really counting that because that was such a big budget that there's no way for it not to be a certain level. But we did find that when it got later in the third one. Yeah, that went out.
Yeah,
but even with say like Army of Darkness, like I really enjoyed Army of Darkness, but it feels like it's just a mash together of all of his ideas without really having a clear vision, like kind of thing. It's really fun and it's really that, but it just structurally feels all over. And I feel like Drag Me to Hell is a little bit like that. Like it feels like it's kind of struggling to balance the serious with the humour and the cheesiness parts.
Yeah,
and it's struggling to balance those two parts. And I feel like it's something I've noticed throughout a lot of his films, and even sometimes that he can't always. Even the new Doctor Strange, to be honest, I found wildly unfocused on like what it actually wanted to achieve, like whether it wanted to be a multiverse or whether it wanted to be just a like Doctor Strange being like, you know, delving into more of like horror themes and stuff like that. It couldn't seem to vibe. I'm not saying that's fully Raimi, but part of that kind of structure, his two things that I sometimes find jarring is structure and dialogue. I can get dialogue is when he's writing for like Evil Dead, like Ash kind of thing, then he knows how to do that wild, crazy. But when he's trying to write like real, as in like what you would expect in the real world, I sometimes find that his dialogue is not quite like a lot of the films that he's the one that's written it. I sometimes find the dialogue is a bit like that doesn't feel like someone would actually say, or that doesn't seem like something a person would actually do, which is why I find like his stuff when he's trying to be like in the real world is sometimes jarring compared to his stuff when he's trying to go full on horror. When he's going full on horror and he's throwing out the lines and the cheat, like things like that, you know what I mean? Like that's why it works so well with Ash. That's why some scenes work so well in Evil Dead, or even like when she goes towards the end of this film and she starts going full on, she's like throwing out lines like she's Ash. Like she's thrown out like these which again is like whether it worked with that character I'm not so sure, but it's the same reason that say like he was so good with Spider-Man, because when he was Spider-Man he was throwing out quips here and there, and that's what he is as a character. But when he's trying to have a normal conversation, that's why I think like early in the film, for instance, like when we start and say like I will come back to the opening in a second, but when she's like in the bank, some of the conversations they had, I was just a bit like, I don't know why this doesn't feel like an actual conversation. This feels like you're just making up. This is what bank people would say, right? This is what people say all the time to each other. Like this is, but I don't know. Just I did find it a little bit jarring, some of the dialogue at times, and I know that's not the first time I found that in a Raimi film where I've been like, yeah, that doesn't look quite like. It feels like you're trying to be like witty, or you're trying to be like serious, or which one are you trying to go for here? I don't know.
And I agree with that, but I never know whether that is his just writing style, because I think he wrote this with his brother, didn't he?
Ivan
I was
about to say Reitman, but Ivan Raimi.
Yeah, and I'm not sure whether that is just how the level of the writing, or whether that is the attempt at that 50s B-movie style, because sometimes it does come off a little B-movie. You know, you've got like, just to briefly talk about the relationship, you've got Christine and you've got her boss who's very wishy-washy about getting a promotion, and then you've got Stu who's like this new like ass licker, and it's that thing of like, I was watching it and I was like, is this like is this just a bit iffy written, or is this supposed to be like comic book? Because it very much had the same setup as Peter Parker, JJ, and Eddie Brock. That kind of thing. And in a comic book movie, that's kind of supposed to be a bit campy and a bit cheesy. That kind of works, but when it's grounded in reality, it's a bit like,
It is kind of the thing with this film, to be honest, is the fact that I got to be honest, from the beginning, and actually through quite a lot of the film, it doesn't feel like it's trying to be a campy horror. It doesn't really feel like it's trying to be a B-movie horror. So therefore, when a lot of the B-movie stuff starts happening, it feels a little bit out of place almost, like when it really delves in. Like certain scenes work with the old lady because it feels like actually like scary and gross out, but not insane levels of gross out. But as the film goes on, we get more like insane B-movie kind of gross out, and it starts to feel a little bit like it's cool, it's like awesome, but it also feels like it's a different. You see, like that different.
I see what you mean.
And there are, as we get a little bit further on, there are certain scenes that really like stood out to me as like that one just. I don't know why that just. It was cool, but it just didn't work. It felt like it was out of a completely different film.
I think I know the exact one of the scenes that you're talking about.
Two scenes that I like specifically honed in on as being like that doesn't match almost the horror that was earlier in the film, and that doesn't work for me so well, kind of thing. Like, this is, and I'm not like shitting on this film because I definitely enjoyed it actually more than I remembered enjoying it. It just is there is just something tonally just off that I've only watched it again like last night, so I can't say that my mind is fully developed on the exact point.
It might come developed anyway. Your brain's undeveloped. And it was never there in the first place. Let's jump into the opening, because I think the opening of the film is quite strong.
Yeah, it is.
We have the little boy, Sal.
It is really, it's really fast. It's like, I swear it's only like a minute and a half or so.
It's a couple of minutes, isn't it? It does get into it
so
very
quick.
But I like it that the saying, well, what did this boy do? He stole like the silver necklace from the gypsy camp. And one thing that I like is that when they pull the necklace out, you can see like the flies on it, and it shows it's quite evil. It's a bit campy, but it shows it is evil. And then we get the scenes like when he's lying, Juan's lying on like the table, and he's looking above him, and you see like the shadow hands grabbing him. And then when he finally does get dragged to hell, it's all done through shadows and stuff like
knocked
that.
Over the
knocked over the balcony.
Like, oh, shit.
And you think he's gone then. But I think it's a quick opening.
Obviously it doesn't really actually show the child like we get towards at the end,
which is good. I think
it's quite full on.
Doesn't blow its load.
So we don't actually know. So we just see the shadows of like the boy being like pulled down and like the screaming and the. And obviously the woman who vows, I can't remember her name, but vows to I will see you again, or I will beat you next time. That kind of line. And as a quick introduction to like the kind of level that we're dealing with of like spirits and things, I thought it was effective. And because it's a kid, again, that always adds. And this film does like to push with the taboos of like certain things that people don't want to see happen.
Yeah, like you don't want to see a kid get taken to hell.
Nobody does. And nobody wants to see that happening. But it's it definitely pushes the barrier. So it's effective in the start. I can say I completely forgot about that part of the film.
Yeah, I did.
I remembered like quite a few scenes in this film, but I completely had forgot that opening. So it does, like as I said, like, and even that kind of a little bit, I guess, kind of sets your tone on a kind of, because it has a little bit of a cheese at the start and things like that. But again, it's because I think we spend quite a little while getting to know Christine and the bank that kind of normalizes everything out a bit to the level that I don't think you ever really had with any of those other horrors so much. Like even Evil, the only one I could say is the original Evil Dead is the one that had a bit more time to really let you delve into like the character and stuff like that. But apart from that, it was mainly just like we're getting pretty much straight into this. And I'm not saying it doesn't get into this. It just takes a little while to like build to that kind of horror element.
Well, because we see Christine reading or like reciting the confidence book or the audio book, whatever she's doing. Yeah, and then we see her at the bank. Then she goes to see the heartthrob, Justin Long. The only character's name I know in this is Christine, and then Justin Long. I don't even know Justin Long's character name. It's just Justin Long for me. I can't remember any of their names. But I think Justin Long is great. He's like a modern day horror hero. I think he does so much, and he's happy to play characters that are absolute assholes, like in Barbarian. But this is very much when
he is Clay. Professor Clayton Dalton, or Clay
Dalton.
Christine Brown. Sylvia Ganush is obviously the older lady. Yeah, so they're the main ones.
That's the one. But I think this is still 2009 Justin Long, so he's probably done Dodgeball. He's probably done Waiting. They tried to have that like teen heartthrob,
2000,
young adult romance era, didn't they?
He didn't quite fit you, but he'd been in Die Hard, Live Free or Die Hard, or Die Hard 4, wherever you are in the world.
Live Free and Die Hard.
So yeah, he'd done quite a few. So he was definitely on the rise. I did with his character. I did find a lot. Like, I can't say I was like huge on any of the characters in this film. I find them. They were fine. They worked.
They were
Christine's builds as it goes along. But yeah, I found his character, out of all of the horror films I've seen him, this is definitely the blandest.
I felt
he is meant to be playing a kind of a bland straight. Yeah. He is the straight.
He's the straight
man. But yeah, it definitely. I don't know, maybe it's just that Justin Long, when he's in a horror film, he deserves punishment.
He must be punished.
He deserves level of punishment, and I feel Raimi has failed him because he does not get punished the level that Justin Long deserves. And I like Justin Long. I love Justin Long. In a horror film, you punish him. You give him a deadly twist that is horrible to him. The second you see Justin Long in this film, you're like, so how's Justin Long going to die this time?
He's like the Sean Bean of horror, isn't he?
Yeah.
So he needs to die in a horrid way. We love him, but he needs to die for our sins.
And obviously, that's why, as you said before, Barbarian played so well, because it basically played on... Because at this point in time, you do expect him to be... at this point, he would have literally purely only been the nice, charming, boyish... young lad.
He wasn't he?
Who is, or the lovable, and here he is. He is the boyish kind of boyfriend kind of thing. I was going to say charming, but again, I didn't really find him that charming.
No, but he's got
I found him quite naggy after.
He's got that like small town charm, you know what I mean?
He's got that little bit. I think maybe his family stuff that he gets in this film kind of brings him down. Brings him down because it's like, oh, your family are dicks.
Family are dicks. Although one character choice I really admire about the film, and about Justin Long's character in particular, is, now this is 2009, so supernatural phase is starting to go, probably about to kick off, because this was the same year that Paranormal Activity came out.
Yeah.
And every supernatural film has the same arc for this kind of character, where they don't believe it first, and then towards the end of the second act, they see the demon, they see the devil in play, and they're like, oh, this person was telling the truth all along. I need to get involved and help out. However, in this film, Justin Long is like, nah, you're just fucking... You're going crazy. All the way until the end. And then that's why the ending works so perfectly, I think. And we'll talk about the ending.
He does go...
He goes along with it.
It is good. It doesn't make him a hate... Like, at first, because you know what's happening to her, I guess in your head you're a little bit like... she's not crazy. She needs to deal with this. Stop trying to prevent him from actually dealing with... She needs to get a move on here. She got like 3 days. And you're like trying to just make her think it's just like after the effects of what's happened to her kind of thing, of being attacked. But at the same time, they do still make him a positive character, because he stays with it, even though he basically almost has no evidence in front of him that actually, apart from how she's acting... Yeah. To him, she basically is just going insane.
Which is why I think it's such a good character choice, that they don't have him witness anything that happens.
Yeah.
He's just there after.
I was going to say it makes the ending more effective because you're like, he did legitimately love her, because most people would be like, nah, I'm out.
Yeah, I'm out.
Like, fuck this.
This farm girl who's now going insane.
He was like, where the fuck's your cat?
Yeah, you had it.
What
Yeah,
do you
that's
mean,
great.
your cat?
You had a cat.
That doesn't make any sense, you weirdo.
Yeah,
You've either got it or you're damn.
Yeah, you got it or you're damn. You know? But we'll jump to the actual cursing scene, because Christine's told that if she wants this promotion, she's got to
be cutthroat ruthless.
Yeah, you've got to make the hard decisions at the bank. I love that they're like, oh, it's a bank, we're going to have like one person who's like, oh yeah, I really want to help you, instead of being like, oh, just give me all your fucking money. Absolutely brutal and money hungry that bankers are. You know, I was like, this is already not real. It's a good banker.
As I said, outside of the the Stu character worked perfectly fine as the hateable asshole, because that's all he was meant to be. Stealing it as the little squirt, and he gets
the Eddie Brock.
Absolutely. But for the most part, a lot of I will say, out of every part, the bank part is definitely the part when I'm like, no one's acting like a real normal human here.
Yeah.
Like, you don't act like that. You're the bank manager, but you're also oddly like acting like you want to be cutthroat, but you don't seem cutthroat at all. You seem like you're handing and bending over to everyone else's will, and it didn't totally play. I also see on here that Octavia Spencer was a bank co-worker, and I don't remember seeing Octavia.
I don't remember seeing her,
so I'm guessing she was literally in the background, because obviously this is again 2009. You forget that Octavia Spencer, like after The Help kind of kicked off, but I just saw it in the lines. Octavia Spencer as a bank co-worker, and I've seen her pop up in a few horrors around, because she was in like Halloween.
She was in Halloween 2. She was in Spider-Man.
Yeah, she was in Spider-Man.
Yeah, she was in Spider-Man.
There's all of these little but they're not cameos. That was just her. She was basically just at the level of extra or occasional
like one
line player.
I didn't notice her at all.
No, I didn't notice her at all either. It just says it there, so interesting.
But it's good. It's nice to see that.
Octavia, where were you? You must literally just been in the background of a shot. But past the bank scene, when the old biddy, the crazy,
the old bin.
The ganoush, the ganoush comes in.
She's so bogging.
She's gonna ganoush you up.
She's so bogging. I love that. I mean, the tapping
of the nails,
the tapping of the long ass nails, the fucking spitting up the goo. Taking her teeth out. Like, old people are bogging, man.
The generalisation.
The generalisation that old people are bogging. But she
is. Yeah, she is like flemming up like crazy, and she is one of. Effective part is she literally makes you feel sick every time.
They play the part well, and I think I know that I read that Raimi wanted to move away from being just like really gory and having it be PG-13.
Yeah,
and I do like the way in which not only does he keep some of the slapstick. I mean, there are moments where I think it doesn't quite work. At one particular moment, and then. They replace all of the gore with gross out stuff that even though I've watched it, this is my fourth time I've watched it now, still makes me think like, oh, that's fucking gross. Like I was trying to eat last night, and I was like, there's a particular scene coming up in like 5 minutes, I'm gonna eat later. You know, like it still has that effect, which I really do admire about the film.
Yeah, I do like the gross out parts and stuff like that, and she is definitely just a gross out kind of thing. And obviously this is Christine, where she kind of has that conflict, and she she does say at the end about the whole that she could have given her an extra extension, but I don't know why in the scene with the boss I didn't get any I didn't feel like she was offered any choices.
Well, no, he says that it's up to her.
It's up to her.
She's he's like, if we take the home, or we repossess, we do whatever we're gonna do, we make a shed ton of money and a bonus.
Yeah.
Or she's already had like 2 extensions.
Yeah.
Or you can give her another one. It's up to you. And that's when she's like, because she tries to use the excuse of, well, actually, it's my boss. But that's the dirty secret is that like it wasn't.
Yeah.
You know, it was you wanting to get this promotion. You could have been like, fuck it, have another extension.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, it's an art one, and it is something that Raimi does a lot. It's he is quite mean-spirited to his main protagonist. He does things that are basically heartbreaking to them, or things that just like break them down and down and down. And normally when they haven't really done much to deserve it. And in this case, I'd say like basically her problem is ambition.
That's it.
But not even like, you know, not even to this isn't like a major horrible level of ambition. This is just like, oh, I just won't do this for you. But at the same time, you've also, you know, you've had 2 extensions already. We're obviously not getting another. Yeah. As my job kind of side, this doesn't make any fucking sense to give you any more.
No, exactly.
And also, the old lady is not exactly being nice about it. She's being a bit of a twat anyway.
Yeah, she is a bit of a twat.
She literally generally is. So the other sad thing is the fact that you are kind of like, you know, if it had been someone nice, and I guess it's treating them because she's treating them but she doesn't seem like she's treating it differently because the way she's acting, even though she's acting bogging in the
She
middle.
is bogging, yeah. Although being bogging...
Using your slang, to be bogging, as in to be disgusting or gross.
Yeah, although being bogging isn't a reason why people should hate you. You know?
No. But
let's clear that up.
But it is just, it doesn't fully feel like it's a very little thing that feels like it's the level that she gets, and you obviously understand that for the old lady that's like destroying her life, like taking her whole home and everything, and destroying her life, so that she's taking that personally. But it's like, yeah, but also, you know,
you haven't
it's
paid.
a job.
It's a job.
Yeah, it's a job, and she hasn't really done anything to deserve this fucking level of like what you do to her. So it is definitely 100%, like, you know,
it's
you
hard
could say it's you know, if she'd done something real shitty to her, or if she'd like taken it away when she hadn't really no reason to really take it, repossess her, or she'd done something to be like really cutthroat, like if I just mess with this lady's finances I can get around, then I'd be like, yeah, fuck it.
Yeah.
But no, none of this feels deserved enough, so you do feel legitimately sorry for Christine, because it's like this, like that, and the lady is being unreasonable towards her. Like, it's the bank.
Exactly.
You know, take the manager, take the manager. or at least curse all of them.
Well, and this is the thing I had. So, I wouldn't say they're necessarily trying to make Mishganush feel particularly sympathetic, but this film reminds me very much of Thinner. Yeah. You know, both about kind of, you know, Romany gypsy curses. And however, in Thinner, we spoke about this in Dumbest Decisions, I think. The dude's getting his dick sucked whilst driving, hits an old woman, and then they cover it up. They're like, nah, he was fine, she stepped out of the road. So the people in that kind of do deserve some kind of curse. That's deserved. However, an old woman not paying her rent and not paying her mortgage and having 2 extensions and fucking it up to the point where they're like, well, we're going to take your house, and then just going to the bank teller, well, you're just going to burn in hell forever now. It's kind of a bit of an over-exaggeration, you know?
And I think what even builds it on is like later on the fact that she's in that, so it's also partially because she's like, she says that she's proud, and then that she shames her because all those people, but also again, she's the one that, you know, and I get the situation and I get why, but she's the one that in the middle of the bank gets down on her knees and does, like, she shames herself.
That's
you know what I mean? There's a little bit of like, you're saying you're proud, but then you do that, and it's like you kind of shame, because at home she has this bitch of a niece or whatever the hell she's meant to be, but she's also got this huge freaking family down there, and it's kind of like, well, if you were proud, then it's obviously you who decided to not go to one of these freaking 50 people down in your basement, the biggest fucking basement I've ever seen. Like, it just seems to go on for like ages.
It does, doesn't
bigger
it?
Than the house looked at the top. but it's kind of like, you kind of start to feel like, well, you're all shaming Christine in this kind of scene and things like that. It's like, well, what the fuck did you do to help her in that situation then? Because it's obviously got so bad, and she looks like that, and she's so like in a bad state. So she seems like she's just been basically left and neglected, but in the house that doesn't give you the idea that that is the case. So it's like, what the fuck happened here? But either way, it makes even more of a case for the fact that Christine was 100% really not in the wrong at all here.
No.
Like, it seems like the old lady was just like fucking with her money, or like not even just paying, and just being like, oh, I can just keep living like this, they're not going to do shit to me, or, you know what I mean? So the more it goes on, I feel like you don't really feel sympathy for the old lady at all, and you do feel a lot for Christine. You know, some actions she does, you feel less, but
definitely.
so it's definitely a hard one to deal with, but it is hard to kind of follow, because I think one thing that does give you that kind of empathy throughout this film is the fact you just continue to be like, you do want her to get out of it purely because you feel like it's so inconsequential. Like what has happened to her, it's so minute, it's so mini. Even like the fact that she held back this little secret about the fact that she could have given the extension feels like nothing. It feels like no secret at all. It doesn't feel like she's hiding really anything. When she says that she didn't really do anything and she tried to help her, no, she's not really telling the full truth there. But it's also a case of, at the same time, it's like, well, there was nothing, not really, that she could have done.
Because, I mean, she'd have granted you an extension, and then you'd have probably fucked that one up.
Yeah, I was going to say,
you know?
And literally the extension, like, if it's 2 down, you're like, what you got? Probably a month.
Yeah.
And then you're fucked again.
And then you're back.
And then that's it, you're done. So she could have given you a month, but then you'd still be in the same position. And from the way you're acting anyway, you were dead anyway.
Yeah.
From the way your body was decomposing, just sat in a chair, it was like, you can't really blame her death on you either, because you were on the way. you were going. You were like deteriorating midway through a sit down.
Yeah, she would have just rescheduled the appointment, and then the movie would have been just ended. She died.
The end.
The fight in the car park where she waits for her. That's classic Raimi.
Yeah,
you know,
totally.
This was because there's a couple of these kind of spread throughout the film. This was the one that I felt was definitely the most effective. It was surprisingly brutal, and to lead into it, where she kind of walks in, and then we get like the handkerchief hits the windscreen, and then we get that really cool shot where it slowly pans round, and then we see her sat in the darkness, and she comes forward. That's super cool. Yeah,
I mean, throughout the whole film, there's constant, because obviously she's then like grabs into her hair and pulls out a chunk. And to be fair, Christine's hair looks way too good. Like it stays way too nice throughout the film for the fact that I think this old lady takes about 4 chunks of her hair out.
Yeah, this is chunks.
And they're pretty sizable, because it's enough that you can see it in the grip. Like 2 of them she takes just when she's dead. And 2 of them she takes when she was still about. So Christine's hair still seems to say too Christina could do it. It looks like she should have freaking chunks out the side of her head. But no, that scene is really good, and I think, though again it has 1 or 2 kind of like where it gets a little bit like obviously a little bit more of that kind of gross out.
Yeah,
there's 1 or 2 of that, but for the most part it feels like quite a kind of sudden, scary kind of full on like attack in that situation. The idea of someone being behind you and suddenly appearing. And the thing she has to use, obviously, that's kind of adds on to the little goofy kind of gross out, kind of like the stapler to the head and then the stapler across the eye.
When she gums her.
When she gets into the front and she breaks, she basically, smacks her to break her like teeth into the middle of the car, and then she goes to get her, and she was full of, and even, I guess there's even the shot for people like, oh my god, and then if you've forgotten, it's like, oh my god, she literally full on teeth into it. Oh yeah, her teeth are gone.
And she's just gumming her chin.
It's
so funny. Gum job from an old lady.
You just get like the cough up and the bits like that come out and the eye. Like,
so bogging.
But again, I feel like that's still, even with the gum, gum in the chin or whatever, because it comes in such a high octane like fight in the car, and it feels so like actually quite like tension filled. Yeah. Because she's like battling with her. You're like, what the fuck's going to happen? Even to the point of and this is the part when the guitar strings came, when she was like basically going to drive the car forward, and it came with that, and that's what threw me off. But even through to the crashing through the she does go through even to that kind of part. And again, I can't really remember. Is the old lady still there after? Is that what kills her?
No. I don't know whether she dies from her wounds, because
that's what I mean.
She
like,
gets
we find out about it. I never put that link to her in my head until now, when they basically say like what you did to her is what killed her, and then. But is the old lady actually still there, or is she meant to be in this this form of that she can just appear or whatever?
No, she's still there, I think.
Yeah, so she goes for a windshield, but that's not her cause of death.
No, but what happens?
I didn't think about that part at all.
You get that, but then she also gets the ruler into the mouth.
Yeah, they get stuck between. Oh, that's why her teeth break, because it's stuck between her teeth. the ruler stick, because at first I was like, oh, she shoved that into the back of her head, like in her throat. But it's because it's stuck in the two teeth. Then when she smashed it down, it pulls out the teeth.
And then she spits it through the window.
Yeah.
And then we get the really weird scene where she's outside and then she just ducks down, which reminded me of like Scream, you know, when Courtney Cox's character is hiding in the...
This also reminds me, this film was not a 3D film, and yet I would
it
completely
feels
believe
3D.
because there are so many shots that I was like, this could have won, and this obviously was literally at the same... This was the same year as Avatar, but before Avatar was released.
Yeah.
If this had literally been released like 12 months later, if this had been released in early 2010, they 100% would have gone,
oh yeah,
we're going to add a 3D conversion onto that. Maybe.
Yeah.
Because there's so many like things popping out towards you. That ruler flies towards you out of the
there
map.
was literally eye-popping 3D later on.
Literally eye-popping, yeah. I was watching that and I was thinking, was this because obviously this 2008 with like Journey to the Centre of the Earth or whatever is when they really started to pop back up with a lot of 3D stuff. So I was like, is this one of them that and I'm very surprised, to be honest, that someone didn't go, can we just pop a little 3D conversion on that bad boy? Because it would have actually totally worked for most of the horror gross out shots in this film. Because most of it is coming towards the screen or kind of flying past the screen or like, all those kind of
there's a lot of grossness. That's one thing I do like.
I do think that garage scene is good. It was tenseful, it was suspenseful, and again, for me it didn't cross the line where I felt like I was watching a different than what we'd already been given. It didn't feel like it was too much or too out of place. It felt perfect for that scene, and obviously she. That's also when she took the button. She
takes the button there.
Didn't she take the button when she was in the?
No,
that was in the back, wasn't it?
No, she takes.
She takes the button then.
She takes the button because I think that's the whole point of attacking her.
I thought that was when she returned it in the middle of the fight.
No, she turned. I think she takes it off her when she's on the floor, and then she curses it and then gives it to her. And then you get a couple of like. This is one of my things with the film is that I have a bit of a problem with the pacing. So. We get this scene, then we get the scene with the fortune teller, and he's, he won't tell her what's going on. He tells her that she's cursed, which is just an alright scene.
Ramjaz. Yeah, again, I didn't find he was that interesting in the character. I found him quite dull. So when you're going to have someone who's doing exposition, I feel like you need to have a big like looking back, say Fright Night. So if you're going to have someone, it needs to have someone who's got a bit of pizzazz, a bit of it. Normally they try to make someone like a kind of Peter Vincent kind of thing. Even whether it's that one or even say the remake where I had David Tennant, they still try to go like
a bit larger than life,
bit like of a big presence. Or even when it's like I don't know, Ghost and Whoopi Goldberg. She's got a bit of comedic flair to it. She's got a bit of interest. There's something to it that kind of brings you in.
Whereas
and
this guy feels
he's a
bit
bland.
too straight, isn't he?
Yeah, he's a bit too just, and it really brings out because it's one thing is Christine is kind of a bit of a straight kind of standard.
Yeah,
she's not like a overly exciting kind of character. And then neither's Justin Long. So then when you've got a room with three people that are all kind of, bland energy.
Yeah,
you're a bit like
doesn't make the funnest watch. I mean, I like Justin, and that's why I feel like if Ramjas was more of this larger than life character, which I think maybe they would try to stay away from, but yet again it comes into a bit of the tonal inconsistency because I actually like Justin Long in this scene because he's very much like, well, obviously you can tell she lost a button, you can just look at her, and then he's saying
that was one of the scenes actually when he was out of all of them was actually a little bit more high energy, probably the most high energy is in the film, when he's like actually taking digs at the guy going like, this is bollocks.
And then he's like, he didn't want to, he refused the payment, and then he's like, well, he did at first and then he was happy to be paid. I quite like Justin Long in this scene, but like you're saying, I think if
who would have been good at this,
if we had somebody Bruce Campbell.
You should have just done Bruce Campbell.
Yeah,
if Bruce Campbell would have killed this, is like a little bit of a
little bit kooky over the top. And I think you need that when you've got a character who is as straight-laced as Justin Long and Christine. So there's not a lot of give.
I also felt like this character was a little bit like, I feel like we could have just cut a character basically. I feel like he could have just been cut out we could have just cut straight to
the woman. Yeah.
And had her more, because the problem is, because she's played so, like, that opening scene and you think she's going to play, when she actually comes into it way later on, again, she feels like insignificant and she feels like she has no impact, and what happens to her has little impact.
Well, I think she's only got one scene.
Yeah, because you don't really get to know. Whereas if she had been the one helping her all along to try and find this way, because she'd never solved it, and they solve it together, I feel like that would have been a much more interesting storyline than this guy who seems a little bit insignificant and just keeps on giving us stuff that just doesn't work. And you start to be like, well, at this point, love, I'd have gone and found a different fortune teller, because he doesn't seem to know shit.
And and
especially after the cat, I'd be like, well, no, fuck you.
Yeah, fuck you. I ain't killing my cat. And
I'll kill you.
Yeah,
for sacrifice.
And I mean, going back to if they'd have brought the old woman in, you could have had her. She could have gone a little bit eccentric and a little bit weird, because she's spent, I think the opening's in 1969 or 71 or something. So you could have said, well, she spent 30 years trying to solve this and fix it, and it's become a bit deranged.
And again, that's an interesting, and that's why we've got someone with a bit of flair. But this is also why I said, like, for a good first half of the film, why this film feels, because they're setting up character, but because even the stuff with the fortune teller feels so straight-laced.
Yeah.
Like, if you're going to go B-movie with the gross out and stuff, then why not go B-movie with the fortune teller?
A bit campy.
You know what I mean? Like, she can be straight-laced. Justin Long can be... That's fine. We can take that. But because they seem so straight-laced as well, the fortune teller... Because all of these things seem so normal, that's what completely, I think, throws off the structure and the tone of the film. Because it goes... big scene and then slows down, big scene or big moment and then really slows down, and because to be honest, a lot of these characters, you put them in a too normal horror film, or trying to be a serious horror film, when you're trying to mix them with, to be honest, horror that's not that serious.
No, and
tongue in cheek.
Yeah, and I think that works really well as like a counter to how supernatural horror would then go. So you've got like The Conjuring.
Yeah.
You'd have what's her name, Lynn, the main woman in The Conjuring, the old psychic. I don't remember the
Vera Farmiga.
No, not Vera Farmiga. The slightly older woman. No. She doesn't play one of the Warrens. Maybe she's in Insidious. I don't know. I confused.
You're
she's
thinking of Insidious. Yeah, Insidious.
Lynn.
I can't remember her name either.
But either way,
the old lady.
The old lady in the Insidious, the psychic. She's very straight laced. Her two assistants are, they're the kooky ones. They're the comic pairing.
They kind of balance, then that balances them out.
But it balances them out. But then you would get it in films like Conjuring, or all of the rest of the supernatural ones, where they were very grounded, and even if the medium was grounded, the horror was very grounded. So it started small. It wasn't like you have a mental fight in a car park with an old bin.
It wasn't like,
and then you've
spewing your freaking guts all over someone, and then or phlegm coming out your throat into their mouth. That's not what they did.
No,
but that's why
it worked. That's why it worked. Whereas in this film, I find
contrast.
It's too contrast, and that's why I find a lot of the scenes focusing around the scares are pretty good, and a lot of the scenes focusing around the gross out are pretty good. It's just like the points getting to there. It's just a bit of a drag.
And this is my thing. I just do think that, I don't know whether something like Spider-Man affected that even more so. But I just don't think that Sam Raimi's actually good at writing reality. He's good at writing. He's amazing at directing and doing, anything that is audible, tongue-in-cheek, kind of out there. But when he's just doing a standard kind of like meant to be serious kind of one, and I can't. I would have to think, but I know. I'm sure Sam Raimi has done another kind of more serious film. And I don't remember it actually being very well received, because they said it just didn't feel very...
Well, I know he did The Quick and the Dead, which is obviously the Western, which was quite cool.
The Gift was one he did, which was a bit more of a serious supernatural thriller, a little bit of a horror, which was a bit... I know people were a little bit off on at times, but anyway, I just don't think, like, he has a very comic book track record. Even Evil Dead is kind of comic. kind of comic, comedic, tongue-in-cheek. So he's got a lot of that in. So I do think at times he does struggle to write for normality, but also at the same time. But the problem is with this film is it feels like a clash between a point in his career when he was trying to do maybe slightly more serious, less B-movie, trying to be a little bit more, but then at the same time his horror sensibilities are so B-movie.
Yeah.
That this film feels like a little contradiction in his mind of like, which one am I trying to do here?
I agree.
Which one do I want to do? Which way do I want to go? And I'd even put it down to even like the casting in this film is almost like if you were trying to do that one, and I don't think you chose the right cast for the horror that you were trying to do here. I think that you needed maybe someone to be a little bit more broader or a little bit more charming or a little bit more like kind of thing. These actors could totally work if they went down the more serious line. Yeah. But I think that they don't totally work. And even Alison Lohman's Christine, I don't think fully, even when she tries to go into the full, like a little bit more Raimi-ism kind of like character. I don't know, it's okay, but it doesn't totally pull off. I do think someone else could have probably played it stronger than necessarily she does later on. Even for the character though, I don't even know if where it goes with the character later on even makes sense or even works for the character she's been for most of the film.
No, I agree.
Anyway, back on track onto the whole. Not that we don't have to stick. We're skipping past a lot of the character stuff. So there's a certain setup with an envelope and a coin. Yeah. That again, we'll talk about that twist later on and how we feel about that. But just to say that I did have to go back at the end of the film and go back and go, did they actually reference that earlier? And I completely forgot about that. The envelope.
Yeah, I clocked.
Which is we'll talk about that twist when we get to the twist. So. We were talking about the fortune teller, and obviously that he gives her all of these different things to do. Starting with like slightly smaller things about how she can like go and like she goes for like forgiveness to Ganesh's house and like finds out she's dead, and we kind of talked about that. Like her niece is a total bitch to her. It's like I guess so. If you've only heard one side of the story, then I guess you're going to be like, "Fuck you!" Like, what the fuck are you doing here? Yeah, and she obviously plays with her to the point where she's dead, and we get another gross out scene when all of the I can't think of what it's called now. All the stuff that they use
formaldehyde.
All the formaldehyde inside of her. Is leaking into her mouth and her face, so and she's gagging on it. And also, very cool to be fair. I did really like the fact that the old lady's body position moves and the eyes don't move, but as in like in still. But each time you see her, her eyes are almost as if it's taking a long time for her eyes, but she's still able to control her. Yeah. The shot, which could look silly, but I actually thought it looked really cool when her eyes are just pointed towards Christine. Like in dead form. Yeah. And I was like, actually that looks quite really cool. And the fact that every time she goes near that dead body she gets a clump of her hair. Yeah. Like it's just like pulls it out, doesn't how did her hands even it's like okay, it might have clasped on, but it's like still like how the fuck do you keep getting that same hand, that same right hand of hers keeps grabbing that big clump of hair, and it's like you're not even reacting. But yeah, so we can see that Christine is starting to get more and more kind of, obviously on edge and built up and
getting desperate.
And then I think the next major one I can think of is then the sacrifice. The animal sacrifice. Yeah. The next major kind of. There's one bank scene that I did actually want to reference is the blood. The nosebleed mouth.
Stupid amount of blood, isn't it, man?
Again, and again. It is for me. It's this wasn't one of my main, but it was one of those. This was the main one. I was like, you're not acting the way that people would act in this situation.
I was watching.
So like everything in that bank to me had been set out so very like it wasn't B movie enough for me to feel like it was B movie style. So it felt so serious that this was just like her serious job. She had ambition. She wants to get that. So when her nose starts leaking, obviously this is the bit when Stu steals the file that comes in, our I don't know what you call this, our Z storyline of him, Stu's ambition to steal her role. But yeah, we get a couple of drops of blood, and then suddenly it's just
it's so much, isn't it?
It's spraying out of her nose and out of her mouth. Yeah. Into his face, and all he's worried about is like it's has it gone in my mouth? Has it gone in my mouth? And things like that. And he's like, but the way he's like saying to her is basically like, oh God, you need to stop this. You need to. If someone is literally spraying blood at that level out of their nose and their mouth, like again, it's one of those where the gross out kind of B-movie sensibility is coming into a scene that doesn't fit it.
Yeah,
all.
it's a bit.
I thought it was like, I was like, it looks cool.
Yeah,
as they all do, because he's great at doing gross out stuff, but it didn't match. And the way that people were acting, like the people were running over to the manager to get, and I get obviously we're trying to sell like the way that everyone maybe kisses his ass and stuff like that, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But it's just the fact, like, come on, in that, like, that's pushing the boundary a bit in my head, because there's no way that everyone is not concerned about the person who's literally just flowing blood out of their throat.
And it was
nose is one thing, but throat is like that much blood, and everyone's just like, all right, let's just clean up the boss. Oh, is she gone now? Good, she's gone. Thank God for that.
Even that, like, from the nose, you'd be like, what the fuck is going on?
I was like, literally, everyone should be like going towards it, like, oh my God, is she dying? Are you okay? But no one seems to give it at all a shit.
They're just
it's so bizarre. It's like so out of place, I think. Like, I really like it. But it's just so out of place.
It's just, I mean,
even if it just been in his office and that suddenly happened and then she legs it out, so at least you've got an excuse. But there's so many people stood around and no one does anything.
No,
nothing at all, and it is just like. And then like seconds later, she's literally cut. She is actually there's a continuity error because she has like blood like that gets into her hair, down her and her top is covered. Yeah, and then the next scene, that's when she goes up to the Ganusha's house. Yeah, and she's just wipe it, just like got one tissue, and just wiping it off, and she's got a little bit of blood down her top, but her hair's fine, looks pristine. Her face has not got any blood splatter or dry blood, nothing else except just one bit down her top. It's like it's a fair stain on her shirt, but it's like, again, what is happening here?
And that's why I don't know. It was one of the scenes that I thought that could have been cut because that's the thing. You messaged me saying, "Are you watching the theatrical or the director's cut?" And I'm sure when I watched it on Netflix it was the director's cut, but then last night I was watching it and I was like, there's just some scenes in here that just feel so like director's cut stuff that they just put it in and then when they actually watched it they were like, actually get rid of that, it kind of ruins the flow a little bit.
I think well that scene was definitely in the original though. I remembered that scene from in the cinema. I think I watched the unrated. I was trying to find the but for some reason all I could find was unrated. The unrated and director's cut is the same thing. But I looked online anyway. To be honest, there is basically no difference between them. Yeah, there's like one extra shot in each part, and it's not really anything more gory or bloody. The only reason I think I know that I was watching the unrated version is because in the theatrical version, I believe when it gets later onto the graveyard, she shoves a spade down towards the old woman, but you don't actually get to see it. Whereas in the unrated version, you see it go into her mouth.
Yeah, so
I think that was literally about it. Apart from that, it's a few extra shot scenes of like a few moments of the old lady for a bit longer. It's normally only the old lady scenes I think that actually have it.
I mean, this is the one that I found on Drag Me to Hell Wiki. In the scene at the bank before Christine has a projectile nosebleed, a large amount of blood pours from her mouth first. In the scene where Christine sacrifices the kitten, she is shown stabbing a knife back and forth as blood shoots towards her and the kitten is heard screaming. The scene is edited to show Christine with the knife and the camera cuts to show the house as the kitten's scream is heard. That happened in the one that I watched. After the sacrifice of the kitten, Christine is shown throwing the body into a grave as she proceeds to bury it. The scene is edited to show the kitten already in the grave, partially covered with dirt while Christine buries it. And then during dinner with Clay Dalton's parents, his dad asks how his coin collection is going, and Clay tells him of the standing Liberty quarter Christine had found him earlier. So it doesn't really look as if
there's not really much to it. I do think it was one of those, and I couldn't find anything on Sam Raimi's comments on it anyway, because it's so insignificant changes that he wouldn't really give a crap. But unrated director cut was a very early 2000s things to put on the DVD. Yeah, definitely. To be like, get extra people to buy it. Yeah. And a lot of the directors around that time tended to come out and say, that's not my director's cut. Yeah, that's just a couple of shots that we deleted. Yeah. Or that's not really an unrated version because it doesn't really add much. Very few of them normally added much to it. Occasionally you get one that added like 10 minutes to the film. Yeah. But most of the time, they were literally just that crap of like, here's one extra little shot here or there, you know, or one extra moment of blood. Like I know, like for instance, the a bit in the garage that comes in a little bit. In the unrated version, you see what looks like kind of a phlegmy, throaty, tonguey kind of thing that comes towards her. Whereas in the theoretical one, it's like a black goo that comes towards her. Again, just minor differences like that, like something that might be a little bit more gross out, but that's about it.
Yeah.
And this one does. To be fair, if this was like a 12A or a PG-13, it does. Thinking of the film, it does already push the boundaries, but again, the unrated one wouldn't even be a different. I don't think it was even a different age rating because it just didn't do enough to change. Yeah, it's not like suddenly like, oh, here's the PG-13 one and here's the more like 15 or 18 one. And I don't know. This might have been a 15 because I would have been old enough to see a 15 at that point. So I don't know if it.
I could imagine it being
could have
both.
been a 15 in the UK, but in America, obviously, I know it was PG-13.
Maybe a 12A then.
And again, just to go back onto the PG-13 for a second, like this was a phase when you got, I think it's called like The Cave or something like that, which was a PG-13 horror, and we got quite a few of these kind of ones that were just, you know, most of the time they were just really bland horror films, like, because once you take away the major gore, but some of them felt like they were too scared to even try to do the blood in case they didn't get the rating. Like they were making it purely for the rating to get teens in.
Yeah.
And I can't think of it. This is why pretty much in my head I think this is probably the king of PG-13 horror. Because it literally was like the one that pushed it at that point in time. The one that literally pushed it as far as it could go.
Yeah.
But it's definitely not anything to like... but it's still, you know, the blood level, I will say, like, normally blood is restricted, like, to get like even a 12A, you can't have like blood, you're not normally meant to have blood that can actually like is seen flowing. Yeah. So you can have like them stained in blood, you can have like a black goo cover them, things like that, but if it's actually red blood normally, you can't. I'd assume, and you don't really in this film, the only one you really majorly get it in is, you get two. I don't know, actually, that might just be the unrated version that I saw. You get two major blood, which is obviously the blood coming out of the nose and mouth, which I guess they could put down to, well, it's just a nosebleed. That happens normally. That's not necessarily scary. And the other one is the cat. She gets blood splatter all over her. Yeah. But I don't know if that is in both versions or if that was the unrated version.
Maybe in both. But then the eye popping later, I guess.
Yeah, the eye popping, but again, it's not like blood covered eye popping, is it? It's just eye pop. So I think the main thing they tend to have in the when they're like making the certification of it is basically it normally comes down to the blood. So it's not even that. That's why in a lot of films, like you'll see they get away with it. You're like, oh, that's quite a lot, and that's because it's like black or green or alien. It's like, you fucking kill as many aliens as you want. Blast them,
smash their fucking heads
heart out. Yeah, kill them,
rip their hearts out.
But if you break their skull and that's red human blood, then if you bash their brain, no, suddenly that's inhumane. You know what I mean? Like,
it's
like you kill that dog all you want, but don't you dare let a bit of that blood come out of that dog. But so they oddly do have certain things that they're like, not that. But I was gonna say there are just some weird levels of like what's okay and what's not okay.
Well, I imagine it would be a 12A. I'm just looking because obviously, like most of our listeners are actually American somehow. We do get, I mean, it's mostly American, but we do get some UK. I think UK is probably like the second best we get. So for American viewers, we both have like. They have G, which is RU. We both have PG. PG-13 is R12A. So that's like you can be 12 or you can be accompanied with an adult.
Their PG-13 pushes a little bit further than ours. Because their PG-13 I know pushes more into... There are certain films over here that are 15 that they get away with in PG-13 that we don't get away with over here because we're a little bit harsher on some... It's odd. We're less harsh, and it depends on what it is. Yeah. If it's religion, then nah. Over here, you'll get away with that. But if it's over there, they'll be like, nah, you're not getting away with that unless you're 15 or 18. Yeah. I think the same goes maybe with. We're a bit more okay with like sex stuff.
Yeah, people fucking.
But over here, we're properly like if it's like knife. Or if it's blood or gore or like that, we're more harsher than I think they are over there.
Well, they have NC-17, which is our 18s. Yeah. But then, interestingly,
which is also so that people under that can get into
Yeah.
So they've got another level that you can get into as long as you're with a parent.
Yeah. Well, they've got an R-rated film, which I don't know what the R stands for. Which is off
18, isn't it?
Maybe. Well,
that's as high as we can. That's as high as we've got. So
R15.
That's is it?
Yeah, R-rated. So it says there's no direct equivalent. But
I'm sure that
most R-rated
Scream 6
15.
and stuff like that, like those, they're all R-rated. That's an 18 over here. So I think R-rated is
Maybe
more pushing into 18.
Maybe what I saw was.
Isn't there another? I thought there was another one in America which is like. Or they used to have one that was like an X-rated or something like
Maybe
that.
that was
more
school,
like I think that was more porn.
Yeah,
that was just porn,
beating off.
That was like full on.
Yeah,
that was for your porno theatres that
blue
you had,
movies.
Sense of community.
Yeah, bringing back the sense of community, beating off together. I'm trying to think what else.
So, a powerful demon known as Lamia will torment her for 3 days before death. So this is all of the stuff that the lore of the film.
Which is
Lamia, who will torment you for 3 days, dragging you, and one of the really cool ones you get is when she's in the house and you start to actually see him like running around.
Yeah, that's a cool
outside,
scene.
You know,
that's
the
cool.
kind of dragging, and you see the hands reaching out through.
Yeah, it's all kind of.
She gets lobbed against the. I thought that was quite cool. Apart from one CGI scene when you actually see Lamia, and it looks really fake as shit.
Is that when it's at the window?
Yeah, when the window pops in.
Yeah.
That bit, I was like, okay, that took me. Like, you should have just left it as shadows. You don't need that one because that didn't look good. And then she kind of gets CGI thrown around a bit, which again didn't look great. Like when it went into the full-on CGI at times, it was a little bit like, okay, that's taking me out of it a bit because it just doesn't look. Sadly, it doesn't look great anymore.
No,
maybe it did at the time on our eyes that have shifted, but not then. And that's what pushed her to do the one thing that she didn't want to do from the fortune teller, which was the sacrifice.
Yeah, just rough.
Because she thinks she might have like got away or like been okay, and then so she. And this didn't make, to be honest, it didn't make any of all the things she could have sacrificed. I know it was like the closest thing nearby after what just happened to her.
Yes,
so it's the fear that like made her do it. But even then, like. You know, I mean, I'm going and finding something, anything.
Oh, yeah, I'm getting the neighbours dog.
You know, for like Mia or you know, just not something that you're like that. And that it is like it does almost make you judge her more as a person because it's a bit like, well, you couldn't have cared about it, especially as it's like a kitten.
Yeah,
it's not even like a fully grown cat, so it's even worse. It's like he's like proper trying to push people's buttons and being like that. And it's also because in the unrated, or maybe it was the theoretical one too. It's quite violent.
It cuts off in the theatrical one.
Does it?
Yeah. You see her raise the knife and it cuts off.
Oh, in the unrated one, it's literally like 3 strikes and blood splattering up on her face each time it comes. You hear the cat scream like 3 times.
Oh man, that's rough.
Yeah, so in the unrated one, that is one thing that makes it a bit more violent then. She doesn't just raise it, she literally goes da da da, and it literally blood splattering up across her face and everything.
Yeah.
So, and you hear the cat like literally like little screams out loud. So it's harsh. So yeah, I was going to say I didn't think that would make it. I didn't think that would get away with a theoretical cut. But yeah, why? Like it's like with Carrie or like with Mia. If it was like you need to sacrifice, at no point does he say anything about it having to be. He says a freaking chicken.
Yeah.
At no point does he say anything about it having to be a personal to you or you know what I mean. Which just to me just meant, I know you're suddenly like really scared and you're just like, I want this to end now, but for fuck's sake, you know, go outside, find a fucking pigeon or something.
Yeah,
you know,
find a pigeon.
Go into someone's garden, go into a pond and kill a goldfish.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, fucking or go next door and kill your neighbour, because I'd probably choose that over. You know what I mean?
Maybe not jump straight to the neighbour. Maybe the dog.
Not. But if there's no one else around, if I've got to choose between like Mia, my dog, or if I've got to choose the neighbour, I mean the neighbour's fucked.
That person on your street.
You know what I mean? If it's literally like I'm running into the street, like I need this to end now, and it's like there's Mia runs out, and then there's some random guy walking down the street. It's like, yeah, fuck it.
Yeah, fuck it. Just throw the knife
straight in, kill him dead.
Perfect throw.
Kill you shit dead.
And then just go back into your house and pretend nothing happened.
I don't know.
I don't know what happened.
But yeah, no, it just for me, I was just there like, I understand getting that
guess
scared.
It's the desperation.
It's the desperation, but it still is like, I think it makes it worse if you you watch the unrated version. I feel like you'd feel even so much worse for that cat. You're like, why would you? Because the problem is she doesn't. obviously in the theoretical, if it's just one blow, you think it's one, and the cat's dead really quick.
Yeah.
The way she does it is feels longed out, so therefore it's like you could have at least killed it nicely. You didn't even need to like gut it the way that you did. Although
so
I guess in the sacrificial thing, it does show it like gutting it down, like its innards out.
Yeah.
And then obviously, she's burying it.
Yeah.
And then that's when Justin Long, and then they go out for the meal with his family. And
that's quite
it's good. And I quite like the fact that actually, in terms of character, like the mum actually changes her mind on her and kind of comes around a little bit.
And then goes back.
Even though she's a total bitch, the second she goes fucking crazy, and she does seem totally crazy. I did find again the cat scene when she's talking about it, I felt that really weird.
It is very weird.
I know that she's a bit weird, but I just feel like even as the character, she seems so like oddly different in that scene. Like cats go missing all the time. Like, and I guess she's in probably like a kind of shock from what she's just done.
I guess she's nervous in front of her.
In front of them, but it's just like, can you not hear yourself? How fucking weird you sound right now. Like you could have just said yes.
Yes.
You could have yes.
I have a cat. Yes.
Yes, I do. I do have a cat. I don't know. Like, okay, what the fuck? Like just everything to the look on her face, and Justin Long's still trying to be like fair. I was like, of all the stuff that she's done so far, to be honest, that's the one point me as Justin Long being like, yeah, we're going to leave now, and I don't think I want to see you anymore. Because that was a real fucking weird response to, do you have a cat? You have a cat?
No, but she says that, I think they say something along that, and she's like, oh, yeah, I had a cat, and then Justin's like, have a cat. And she's like, well, you know what cats are like. They run
I don't know where my cat is right now.
And it's a bit like,
it's just so fucking weird. It's literally like, it's like me coming over here and not seeing Carrie in your room and going like, oh, where's Carrie? And you're just like, I don't know. Cats run away all the time. They disappear. It's just like, what did you do to the cat?
Imagine if we were out somewhere and you were like, and I'm like, oh, Seb, somebody mentioned something, and you go, yeah, I had a dog. I'd be like, well, what Seb? What have you done to me? You have a dog.
Yeah.
You don't just do it unless you did something fucked up.
It's like you're not at the house right now. Even if something bad has gone wrong, it's like you don't have to admit anything to it. Just say no or yes. I've got one, because it's not like Justin Long's going to go, you said you had a cat, right?
Yeah, where is that?
I'm just going to drive home and I'm just going to ensure she's telling the truth. Yeah, she has a cat.
I brought the cat to her.
Here's the proof.
Yeah.
Here's the dead cat.
But on the dinner scene, I seem to remember more happening. Because we get the eye in the cake, which is quite cool.
Yeah.
But then and you get the fly. But I seem to remember, like, it almost being, like, it level. Like, much more things happening.
Yeah.
Instead, she hears, like, the
banging,
sound.
Banging. It's just driving her mad. Obviously, she thinks at this point that she's free because she's killed the cat. She thinks that's done it. But yeah, it just it didn't. I liked the character stuff in the scene, the judgment of the mum, and you legitimately hate her, but start to kind of warm to her because she warms to her, and then you flip back again. You were like, yeah, I guess that's deserved. She's just fucking freaked out now.
Yeah,
she's mentally unstable, is what you're going to be thinking. But yeah, it oddly, it didn't seem like it built to the level I expected it to.
Yeah.
So yeah, anyway, so. Obviously, this is then like, well, I fucking killed my cat, and that didn't work. So you're thinking you should be going to the fortune teller or not ever going to him again and being like, you were fucking wrong.
Yeah.
I've done all this. And he's obviously like, yeah, but these things sometimes are, there's no yes or no, there's no right or wrong, there's no way to do it. And then he's like, yeah, there's no way to do that. Give me £10,000.
Give me £10,000.
$10,000, sorry.
$10,000.
$10,000. It's like, really?
Yeah. So, well,
at this point, you're like, yeah, I'm just gonna hand over 10,000 and fuck it.
To a man who told me to kill my cat.
Yeah, and it just is like, I can help you for one last time. I've got one last like play in this, and that's it. And it again just shows what a bland kind of character.
What do they need that $10,000?
I don't know. That was my. I don't know if it's for the goat or for the setup. But I'm just like, because when they get to the woman, I was questioning this as well, because I was sat there going, when they get to the woman, she's like, I have waited for my chance to do this for so long. So why the fuck did you need £10,000 to do it?
To make it a coin.
It's not like, I'm literally there like, the fortune teller didn't give a shit, did he?
No,
the fortune teller's just like, and there's my £10,000. Fantastic, I am sorted. I've been scraping by and just bullshit out of random ass books.
Getting people to kill cats.
Yeah, this was fun.
No, this one scene.
If it was now, it'd be like, TikTok.
Yeah,
look what I made this bitch do today.
Yeah, new side hustle. Yeah, new side hustle.
How much money can I make of this by just flashing a few books and like, how racist is this bit? Just because I'm Indian, she thinks I can tell fortunes, so I'm going to play with her.
I'm just going to play her. Yeah. There is one scene, and this is where I kind of was like, it felt an unnecessary scene. This is the scene I thought you were on about with the garage, and it's before we get to the seance.
Yeah.
Where she gets attacked again by the old woman's spirit, and the old woman punches her down the throat.
This was the most. Some of those other scenes definitely, but this was the one out of all the most that I was just like, this just was no need for this scene.
Exactly,
and it felt completely out of place. The humour felt pushed up to a huge goofiness level.
Yeah.
It did, and again, that felt like Army of Darkness or something like that level of like goofiness.
Well, because I like the idea of punching and like the fist being in the mouth, but then we get this thing where she looks at a rope and then she looks up to see a bit like a thing that's holding it in the sky.
There are a few
then
things
she looks
in
over
this
to
film
an
that are
anvil.
far too coincidental for my liking, far too on the nose of coincident that it just so happens that those things coincide. Who the fuck has an anvil in their fucking house just on the off chance?
Not just that. Who has an anvil hooked up, apart from Wile E. Coyote? Who has an anvil hooked up, ready for somebody to stand underneath it?
In fact, to push that even further, who the fuck has an anvil?
Maybe a blacksmith.
But it's just like that is cartoon comic booky level of like. And that is goofy comic humour that again just does not fit in this film. I can take some chin gumming, I can take the fluids and biles and stuff because it adds into the thing. But the shoving of the fist in again could work as a horrible, creepy thing, but it doesn't because it plays like a big rubber chin underneath. Like it plays like a It plays in my head. All I could imagine was that happening to Ash in The Evil Dead, with his big chin and being like. And I was like, that is 100. That doesn't match this flow at all.
No.
Then she sees that and the dropping of that and the. In my head, it was literally like I was hearing the comic booky noises, like the whoop bang.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I was literally hearing Looney Tunes music in my head. And it also didn't look right as well. Certain shots looked like as if they were shot not in that same set. Like they were shot like the angles and stuff. It was completely out of place. And it's one of those ones that literally made me go, again, like this, he hasn't nailed down the tone of this film. Like this film feels like it maybe needed another edit.
Yeah,
like it needed to tighten up a bit.
It just did. Like I said, I would have liked that scene in Evil Dead because it is funny. But it's just that it feels so out of place.
It felt like Evil Dead though. And the thing was that this film, apart from a few like getting his humour, it didn't feel like it was going into full Evil Dead universe. Yeah, but this scene and. The graveyard and stuff later on starts to feel a bit too Evil Dead for my liking. Like he started to write an Evil Dead sequel instead of a different film.
I liked the graveyard.
I do like parts of the graveyard. I just think there are certain parts in it that just felt like around that kind of part of the film, and basically from this point onwards, that just start to feel a little bit too Evil Dead-y. And not like what they'd set up previously. You know what I mean? It felt a little bit too like he leaned too far into his humour, too far into that side of things. When, to be honest, we'd had Gross Out, but we hadn't. I wouldn't necessarily say to this point we'd had a lot of like
wacky,
Gross Out, wacky humour. Yeah, and it felt like it got pushed up from this scene as if he was like suddenly like, because all the rest of it, like the shadows in the house and even her being in the car, it all felt quite tense. And yes, it had some quite like. Little humorous points, maybe
like black humor,
but you might not take it as humorous at the same time.
Like the gumming, the gumming's funny, but it's also quite gross.
It's quite gross, and the idea that really she was trying to bite down on her chin, but hasn't achieved that. Yeah, adds a little sense to, when she goes through the windscreen, there's a little bit of an odd way that they kind of do it that again makes it seem like it's almost trying to be a little bit humorous. Dark.
Well, it's such a surreal situation. Like you're having an epic fight with an old woman. Yeah, it's kind of funny.
Nothing pushes to the level of this scene in the garage.
Yeah,
it's just, and this is while she's going around trying to gather all the stuff for that £10,000 and not being able to get the money, and they find out that Stu's, well, they don't know that yet, but basically Stu's done it and killed the deal, and so Stu's going to get the promotion.
Yeah,
and she's desperate, and this also leads to another scene that I thought felt completely like, you don't really know how people react in these scenarios, do you? You don't really know. I feel like you don't understand how a person would react, because the fact that she can't get the money that's going to save her life, she's literally a day away from basically being taken to hell, and she knows the situation, and she sits there eating ice cream. Felt like the most obvious, I don't know, woman film trope.
Yeah, it's very rom-com,
sat
wasn't
there,
it?
The lactose intolerant bit, I guess, adds a little bit. Like, he thought that was a funny kind of that when it's trying to show it's the end of her life, so fuck it, no hard boiled, but no bars hold. Sorry,
no holds barred.
No holds barred.
No bars hold.
I got that wrong 3 times.
Yeah.
But it just, in this scenario, everything she's gone through with the house, she's literally just been fucking punched in the throat by a...
Yeah.
To be sat there kind of crying over that, it's like, if you're about to die, you're going to do a lot more than fucking ice cream from a thing and sat around crying about it. I mean, if I'm a day from dying and I think, fuck it, I know how it's worth, I'm going somewhere to find that money. I don't care how. I'm not going right, and I know it's meant to speak maybe for her character being such a good-hearted, as we find when she has to choose between people's lives and her own. But still, to me, I was almost at the level of, oh damn, Sam Raimi, that's almost sexist.
I thought you were going to be like, if I can't find this money, I'm just gonna smoke crack for my last day.
I thought you were going to say, I'm just going to sell this.
Yeah, I'm just going to sell myself.
I'll make that money somehow.
I won't make any money. I'll just smoke crack until I die.
But to be honest, that would have been more on point of where you're probably heading to if it's the end of your life. You're just like, fuck it, I'm dead anyway. I've not got the money.
Going out of style.
I'm going to cry at a table and I'm going to eat ice cream because I'm lactose intolerant and that's my rebellious side. That kind of stuff is what makes Christine come across as quite just a bland human all round.
Oh yeah,
well, it kind of makes you think like, oh, wow, you're a really fucking dull person, aren't you?
I mean, to be honest,
that's the best you can do. You deserve Justin Long because you're equally as dull as each other.
Yeah,
aren't you?
not Justin Long.
Not just
character. How dare you?
Justin Long. No, we love you, Justin Long.
We love you, Justin Long.
I'm sure you're much more like Barbarian.
Yeah.
2 insults.
2 insults. You get a double whammy on this podcast if you ever listen to it. Yeah.
Double dogging.
Yeah, double dogged. To be honest, by this point in the film, I kind of lost interest, man. I felt like it had gone. It was. I mean, it's nearly 2 hours. The film. I'm sure it's nearly 2 hours.
It's 99 minutes.
What?
Yeah, it's 99 minutes long. So that doesn't speak well for it.
No, it doesn't.
I did. I mean, I was somewhat because I guess I had low expectations. I was still somehow there, but this was, if anything, that scene was the one that was like, I don't know. I don't think you know what you're doing with this, and this has now broken the continuity in my head of what kind of horror you're trying to do here. And that whole part was just, I thought, was so poorly done.
Yeah,
that it kind of made me lose faith in where we're going next with this. And up until that point, it was a fun little kind of, chase around, trying to get away from it. Suddenly you're getting constantly followed by this thing. And it was kind of fun and worked. And, but I do think it does. The graveyard later on is when it comes back up a bit.
Yeah, I like that scene.
The seance scene, I found a lot that some things I liked and some things I thought just didn't work and just felt like we were just adding on to this kind of oddball kind of humour at times. And like we've already discussed, going to the Sandina, who is the woman who, going to her, it felt like, it just, like we said before, I didn't feel like her story made sense. I felt like if you're going to introduce someone at the beginning, then she should have more impact in the story than she does here.
Yeah.
Like that one quick scene at the beginning was not enough for us to really give 2 shits about this character or believe what this character's doing. and we get no real background apart from her saying that she's wanted to have the chance to do this again, but we don't even get any context of like how or what she's been doing or why she is there. Why she even actually knows apart from witnessing it. You know what I mean? Like, it's literally like that. I witness police officers doing their job or firefighters doing their job. That doesn't mean I can get into a fire engine and go, I witnessed it. I can do it. You know what I mean?
Doing this.
You know what I mean? Like watching a construction, someone build a building and going like, I could do that.
Easy.
Fuck it. Yeah, I witnessed it. It happened to me. That is a fact. No, because we don't get anything for it, it does start to get a little bit like, just as long characters basically told to fuck off. And I get it's also because I guess we know that this is kind of becomes an inconsequential scene. Like it actually doesn't lead to anything.
It doesn't.
Does it? A waste, and
it feels like almost like a fake out ending.
Yeah, they're so we get in there. They sit around the table. They bring in the goat. They start to say that they're talking to the other side and that they're going to get to La Mira, is it? And that they're going to La Mania. Sorry. Then they're going to bring him, and they're going to talk, and they start like really like chanting and holding the goat and stuff like that. And you think they're going to cut the goat's throat, but they haven't actually got to that point yet because they want the spirit to go into the goat so they can kill the goat. Yeah,
this scene does have probably my favourite and what I think is the creepiest shot of the film, and that is when they first call out to the spirit, and we see like some other spirit turn up, and she's like this, some of them will hang around the door and try and get in, and then we get like a quick shot of them sat at the table and all of these different undead just like slowly walking towards them before they get expelled, and that scene just for me felt super creepy, and I was fuck, that is awesome. It just looked visually just a treat,
Yeah, I really like that, and that was an interesting shot that was almost too quick. I almost wanted a little bit longer to take that shot in. But that's what I mean. Like one shot to do with the dead surrounding them and the fact that she has to expel them to get to the main demon that they're looking for. That's interesting, and pretty much more interesting than what follows it, which is then just a lot of effects, a lot of bang, a lot of boom. A lot of lights going off. Yeah. One person gets possessed. Passes it on to the goat for a second,
and then it speaks to them. Yeah,
and it speaks to the goat, and then you get the goat speaking, which is kind of funny and corny in its way. And kind of works. Then the goat bites her, like I don't know, whatever he is, cabana boy.
Yeah, he's just a random dude, henchman. Yeah,
we don't know this woman. She could have done the Farage dudes. And then he comes, and again, that feels very Evil Dead, very possessed, floating around, but he doesn't seem scary. It felt corny to me. He didn't seem like a scary demon at any point for this demon that's been so built up as being this terrifying thing, and even when we're seeing the shadow form has seemed quite scary, the stuff that they've been doing. And then when he's kind of like floating just there does a jig in this obvious kind of like, it's almost like you can see, like you can't, but it's like I can see exactly where all of the lines of his thing for being held up are, because his arms are literally propped up like that, or like in 2 points either way. It literally is like a classic Ghost like animation of what you'd expect a ghost to be like. Ooh, he's there like leaning over towards her, and she's getting like chased around by him, and that's when Sandina, who's been knocked out, kind of is woken up, and then she's so quickly able to just dispel it. Yeah, so fast. It's like that was too easy.
Just gone. See you later, mate.
And Christine misunderstands this as the demon being taken away, killed, as in gone, and then that's when, being as useless as ever, Jazz turned around to her and goes, "Oh, you've misunderstood this," which, to be honest, all the way to getting outside and being in the ambulance and the ambulance arriving and doing all that, it's like, one, you waited this fucking long to tell her that didn't work.
He's got the 10
grand.
The
first thing on your mind should be, I'm so sorry that didn't work. But no, you leave her long enough for her hope to be like, oh, I'm free. In this, because it's so forgettable, Sandina dies.
Yeah, she does, doesn't she? At this point,
you didn't build her up. As I said, there was a much more interesting way this story could have gone, but you didn't do shit to make it interesting. Yeah. So this woman who could have been alive for decades, and we could have known about her story and how much she's tried and hard, which could have actually been quite a poignant part of the story, is replaced with a woman who appears in 2 scenes. Yeah. And basically does what feels like fuck all, because then she's knocked out for half of the other scenes she's in. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's such a pointless part of the story. Which then leads us to what I just don't like it. I just thought it was it leads to a fantastic ending, but it's a stupid plot point. It's a stupid way to come up with an excuse for why she basically goes on a journey to expel the demon or give it away without actually realizing, which is Jazz concealing the button in an envelope. I just fucking didn't like that at all. I thought it was so stupid to go the whole... Earlier on, we established a coin that was in an envelope. Yeah. And now here's the envelope. And then they crash the car, so it all gets mixed up with the bag. And it's so obvious. And I've seen so many people online who said, like, well, that was the most obvious thing. The second that it got mixed up in the car, you know exactly that she's not got it in there.
I do like it, though. You know? I like the scene where she's in the diner and she's trying to...
I like that part. Yeah. I like the fact... it's to be honest, it's a plot point that I was waiting for them to get to, because I find it one of the most interesting parts of one of these ideas is the idea that you have to pass it on. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, whenever a film has to do this, the first one that pops to mind is Final Destination 5, actually. Yeah. That was the thing that made that sequel actually more interesting, was the whole kind of almost serial killer vibe they had to bring into it. The killer vibe, to actually make it a bit different, which is a plot point that I actually think, you know, they should bring back up if they did another one. They should come back around to that plot point and develop it a bit more. But it's the envelope thing that pisses me off. It's not the way that she has to go and bargain and barter for people's lives and hand it over for a gift. It's just the consequentiality that he has to seal it in an envelope and say you have to pass it on as a thing, when I don't see how the envelope has fuck all to do with the idea of passing it on, and why she can't just hand over the button to someone and just be like that. It feels far too coincidental of an idea that this is just two things that they writ, obviously. Yeah. You know, they wrote that into the story. The idea of, there's an envelope here and then there's an envelope at the end. It's the idea that they think that that's a really clever way because there's a coin and there's a button. Yeah. And that's two things. And I'm sorry, all of the shit she goes through, there ain't no chance that I'm taking the chance that I'm not checking that is a button. Yeah, exactly. You know what I mean? Or there's not any chance that all this stuff getting handed around and moving, that, to be fair, that you're not going to, notice or even put your hand over it, because a coin and a button feel very different. Yeah, definitely. If you touch even the outside of that envelope, you know what I mean? Like, even in there, it shows like you can see like the circle of the thing. But even then, like, the button's got the little holes and stuff, so you'd notice it. Yeah. So it's more the fact that it's something. It more annoys me that someone thought that was going to be a clever twist. Yeah. And it's not that the ending twist and the stuff she has to do isn't interesting. It actually is probably some of the more interesting thing in the film. I just wish they'd gone about it.
There's a better setup.
And I wish that it wasn't the setup that people think the twist is good only because of what happens following the twist. Yeah. But I don't believe that people think that the envelope thing is a clever part of the twist. I think it's a bit of a silly way to get to it, kind of thing.
Yeah, it's not the best setup.
Anyway, that's my rant about the envelope.
Well, I like the scene when she's trying to weigh up who to give the envelope to. Yeah, I quite like that.
I really like the diner scene. I think that's one of the better parts to show her character and show her kind of that she is a good person.
Yeah, because she's looking at everyone and then she sees like the old dude. Yeah, and she's like, well, he's close to death anyway, which is still rough, because I don't think it's not just the fact that this person's going to die; it's that the fact that they're going to be in hell forever. That's the
it's an extra
thing.
I do love the line. I do love that, like, because one thing I do like about her is obviously at the start you see the whole unconfident, like she's listening to tapes, and you see her confident have to build through the story, and I do love that bit in the diner with the waitress when she's like talking to her about the fact she's just ordering coffee and they never give tips, and she's like, do you want me to give you, I'll give you a tip you'll never forget, kind of thing. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, I do really like that, the fact that a little bit of a kind of fierceness kind of is starting to come out a little bit more, in little ways, but then we still see that kind of tender with Stu when she's like ringing Stu like, it's going to be it. I'll just fucking get this asshole. Yeah. but then the second he breaks down like a little bitch, she's like, I can't actually sacrifice you to live in hell. Like, which is a big thing, because to be honest, probably a lot of us would not go. When you actually think about the logistics, I'm going to be dragged, I'm going to be burnt in hell, I'm going to have to eternity. Yeah, take the button.
Yeah, take this, mate. Who do you like enough to do that? Who do you dislike enough?
But it's an interesting part of the thing that you're almost surprised that you expect it actually to kind of go like, she comes to the realization that she probably couldn't do that to anyone. Yeah. Which, fair enough. But there is a little bit of you that thinks it's going to go a little bit further. Like, okay, well maybe, normally in this they'd go to like a prison or something. Be like, so what did you do? Diddle kids. Here's the button.
Yeah. Here's the button you get. Why have I got a button? Well, you're diddling kids. Yeah. It's your diddling kids badge.
Would you like this button? What if I tell you there's cocaine in this? Yeah. There you go. Take the button.
Yeah.
And there we go. And we're happily ever after. But no, that's not what we get. She can't do it. She's going there. So she decides to... Oh no, sorry. I forgot we go to Jazz one more time. Yeah. One more bit of advice
from this random dude.
Is that, from her idea, by the way, not his idea. No, this is her idea that could I do this to a corpse? Could I give it back to a corpse? And like, and she's like, well, I'll shove it down its her goddamn throat. Which, again, she starts to get to such a level of like confidence that I like it, but at the same time, it could be said that she starts to feel a little bit like a different character. From her approach. Because for all of this, she's never really seemed to perk up until this very end of the final act, and suddenly she's starting to feel a little bit more like a kick-ass female protagonist that you kind of wanted in other films. She doesn't quite feel like that same character, which, I can see reasons for it, and I can see reasons against it. She can dig 6 fucking feet deep really fucking fast.
Yeah, she just powers through that.
Because it's already the middle of the night. She's been sat at that diner. It was already night. She goes to Jazz, and it pretty much implies this all happens one after the other. And then she goes and she manages to dig 6 feet deep, and it's still dark middle of the night. Yeah. It's like, fucking hell, you are a strong ass girl to build that down. Yeah, I know. Inconsequential things like this, you want it to be in a grave, and I do like the grave scene.
Yeah, it's good. I like it.
The fact that she has to, the old lady still manages to get a clump of her hair.
Yeah.
The fact that it starts like proper thundering down with rain, and she's like filling it, and it's getting filled and filled.
And the water's coming in, yeah.
And then the fact that the old lady, again, eyes seem to have moved and shifted one more time as she like floats towards her, and she...
Yeah.
And then I can't remember what is the line, whatever the line that she says to her basically when she shoves it down her throat,
I can't remember.
Take this gift or whatever it is. Yeah. But again, it's a line that sounds again like a different character speaking, but it works well enough. But this is just kind of that one where it does feel like this has been going on for a long time in the film. And it does
that's
feel
my
like this
thing.
has taken a while. To get to this point, and it feels like one of these things should have been cut somewhere.
Yeah.
And I know, it's only and this is the weird thing, because it's only a 99-minute film, so that makes it feel like I shouldn't be saying that the film needs to be cut, because then it would probably seem like a really short film.
But that's why I thought it felt like 2 hours, man.
Yeah, that's why I do think certain parts of this really do drag.
Well,
at certain points, they drag you to hell.
My thing is that you get a lot of good set pieces, and then you get a lot of moments, mainly the character moments, that just kind of drag, to be honest. And it feels like you get maybe 4-5 scares featuring, Sylvia Ganush. You get when you first meet her in the bank. You get the scene where they have to fight in the car park. You get the scene where she's in bed, which is a great scene, where she gets up and then she spews like worms all over her, maggots and stuff,
when she used to fly. You can hear the fly in her stomach afterwards as well.
And then you get the scene where you're at the funeral, and then you get the scene with the anvil, and then you get the scene with the graveyard. So you've got 6 of these kind of gross.
She does
scenes.
pop up in tiny little reflections moments on her phone and things like that. Yeah, the demon scene in the house and stuff like that.
So to me it's almost like
they're all spread out. They're all spread out across lots of things, but it just is. I do think it speaks of the film that it's just like we've said about this tonal shift, and that we're split here. Because it feels like we go from a more serious film to a B-movie horror. Or a gross-out horror, and then a serious one. And it just does keep, and it feels like the problem is when you're built to such a high level with like, oh my god, this gross out there, that's horrible.
Yeah.
But because that kind of makes you laugh and chuckle, when you come back to scenes where it's all played very straight,
it
starts to feel a bit like, well, that's not really the fun ride I expected it to be as much. You know what I mean?
That's it.
It makes the film feel less like I could watch all of the horror, the actual gross out horror scenes. I could watch those happily all day long. I can't say that I really want to see Christine's journey in between that play out.
I don't really care about that.
You know? I think this is what made me. I think originally was the fact that I was like, there's really cool gross out, there really things like that. But I do think that, to be honest, the main story not only doesn't go in that interested in a direction, it doesn't feel like something that hasn't been done by other people, kind of thing. But it also just generally, I just think the characters and stuff just aren't made interesting enough. To really draw me in, and it is why I'd say if there's what is this, the Justin Long's third, is it third or fourth? I feel like I might be forgetting another horror thing that he's been in. Obviously Jeepers Creepers 2 as a cameo, but I feel like there's something else that he's been, but anyway, it's definitely for him anyway, I feel like this is his least impactful kind of horror that he's been in. Alison Lohman quit acting after this film.
Oh really?
Yeah, so she literally retired, she got married around the same year as this film, and she quit to kind of raise kids and stuff like that. And
fair enough.
Apart from she got married to, I can't remember what his name is, Nazina. He's the guy who directed Crank 2, Ghost Rider, Spirit of Vengeance. Those kind of high. Have you not seen? I haven't actually seen the Crank films, but Jason Statham basically has to stay. It's speed.
Has to keep his adrenaline high. I've seen it.
Very high octane action kind of guys. Not at all. The guy who directs it, they're very action kind of full on guys. Yeah. Not at all who you'd expect this actor to be with, but she seems happy apparently. I think she's an acting coach now. She just gave it up. She was only really big for she was a kid actor, I think, but then around 2002 to 2009 she was casting quite a lot of things. Big Fish by Tim Burton and something a bunch of different projects that she was in, but then she just kind of stopped. I guess maybe she didn't enjoy it that much.
Fair enough.
Which happens quite a lot. You get it. Some people just aren't fully all over it.
Some people just don't have that dog in them, as they say. I mean, that's my main thing is I like the scene in the graveyard. I think it's good. I like when the crucifix falls and kind of knocks her out, and then she bursts out.
But you hear a metal sound, which makes you think she should have been knocked. She should probably have been probably drowned in the grave.
Definitely. But I don't know. I think it's fun, and then we get to the ending, which I do think the ending is quite. It's fun.
I think
it's a good ending.
I think the ending is kind of maybe what rises people's expectation of this film higher.
Yeah,
because it's a memorable ending.
That's it. It's quite a memorable, fun ending.
Again, CGI is a bit patchy, more than I remembered of when she actually gets burnt up and it looks proper fake CGI.
But right towards the end.
Yeah, that's as her skin layers go away, it doesn't look even like a human.
It's the last.
It's
the last 2 seconds or something.
Yeah, it just doesn't look suddenly it's you don't look human anymore.
Yeah.
But to be honest, what really kind of actually sells it, Justin Long is the part that sells it. His reaction. Because you've just obviously they introduced the whole proposal idea and things and he seems so enamoured with her, and the fact that he's gone along with all of this without any evidence kind of makes you a little bit more drawn. So in this final scene, I'd almost say is the panic on her face obviously as the train is coming towards them, and that's a nice addition to it. She could have just fallen on the tracks and suddenly been but instead the train coming and it going over the top as she's pulling down, so that almost again it's just him, and it's kind of interesting what that follow-up would have been.
Because
no one else around him
is reacting.
But no one else is really noticing it. Really.
No.
But at the same time, it's also because the train was coming, people are going to think she got hit by a train or things like that, but there's not going to be any evidence or anything of it because she's just gone. So it's kind of he's going to be the mad one who has no evidence of shit anymore. And but the tears rolling down his face. His face is in complete fucking shock,
and it's awesome. And it's great because he hasn't believed her for the whole of this film. He's just she's just going a bit mental now. She's
going to help her. it does add a really good impact, and it is a properly like impactful kind of like final scene of like, fuck, it didn't work.
Yeah.
And she's walking back from the button.
Yeah.
And things like that. Like, this was the wrong one. We swapped them around, and yeah. I don't like that part of it, but I do like the ending.
I like the button. I like the idea. I like that it's it is like, oh, you could have. If it was one of the things where if you weren't paying attention, then you could have fallen for it, because it's not super.
I'm not saying that someone couldn't have someone would have probably mixed it, because it's not like anyone pays attention to that early on there was a button in an envelope. No, sorry, a coin in an envelope.
Yeah,
no one's really going to pay much to it. I do think it's the only bit that makes it a bit obvious is the car crash scene when the envelope just so happens to be the one thing there, and then it's all mashed up. They're like, oh no, she's going to have forgotten it, or she's going to mix it up with the wrong envelope.
Yeah.
But then you see. He does clearly show the coin, like you can see a shape inside of it, not the coin, but you can see a shape that looks like it in the envelope. But it's just too coincidental, the fact that there's two random items that are both circular, that both end up in an envelope. They're just it's just too much. I like the idea of an inconsequential item like a button being the main thing.
Yeah.
I just think it's just a bit too like the envelope thing just is. Just so that again seemed like it was clever, but I don't think it was. I thought it was. I think there was more interesting ways they could have mixed that up or messed that up than just having to give the excuse. Even the jazz bit when he's like putting it in an envelope just for that's the stuff that makes it seem like why.
Well, and it's an interesting one. I don't know. Maybe he doesn't want to touch it, or I don't know. So he put it in an envelope.
Yeah, don't you? I would have loved that. If Jazz was the one that like. He takes it in his hand and just like before he puts it in the envelope, I give it to you.
Yeah, it's yours.
And then she just legs it,
just bolts
gone because that's what he deserves.
Takes the 10 grand.
Yeah, runs back, kicks him in the nuts, takes the 10 grand out of his pocket. Fuck you, and
just gets dragged to hell.
Yeah. That's a better ending.
It's a fun film, though. We'll go to the social media lounge.
There's enough. Yeah, there's enough fun and gross out to have fun with it. Sadly, I just wish the rest of it was a bit more memorable than it is.
Yeah. Well, over on the social media lounge, so obviously we put the films out that we're going to be talking about, and we put it on our Instagram and Twitter at CMTH Podcast. We got 2 this week. So one is Neil from at We Needed Roads podcast, and he said he loved it, and those final shots in particular. Which it's a great and it's a memorable ending. And then we've got Half Price Horror Podcast saying Justin Long had the button at the end. He should have been the one dragged to hell. And I kind of get that, but I think that was a lot of people thinking. I would have thought, what I mean, after something like Jeepers Creepers, he was going to be punished. He's such a nice, you expect him to be punished. And I think in my head, that did run through my head. I think I remember when I was watching it the first time in the cinema, I remember thinking that the boyfriend somehow is going to end up being the one to take it. But I guess it's because maybe she didn't formally gift it.
Yeah. He just had it. It didn't say that you have to give it, like you have to I'm giving you this property now. Yeah. So this is now yours. And that was never kind of said or things like that. Would have been an interesting.
It would have been a fun twist, but I quite like the ending of because it is.
I would have also been quite cool with the idea that suddenly he's got it in his hand, and suddenly at that last minute when she can almost like as if something starts happening, and like if she suddenly goes, "I give this to you as property," and it's like what? Boom! Like that could have also been quite a cool kind of twist around that she can be that. The whole idea, because early it kind of would have worked because the whole idea of the beginning is the fact that she's unconfident and not ruthless at all. And suddenly she's heartbreakingly ruthless. Yeah. And then Justin Long's gone, and we could have added another. And again, like part of me kind of wants that purely because I want to add another heartbreaking Justin Long death to my collection. Yeah. Not saying one of them is heartbreaking, but it's still like, oh shit.
Yeah, it's still, oh shit. But I don't know. I guess it's
it works because it is her character you're following in it, and again, as we said, like that kind of like cruel unfairness, that mean spiritedness is kind of there,
and he does that. He has that to his protagonists. Like if you think about each ending of The Evil Dead. Doesn't end well for Ash. The first one, it's implied that he gets taken over at the end,
and the horrible stuff happens to all of his friends, including his like to-be fiance in the first. is just like heartbreaking in its own way, kind of thing.
Yeah, and the Dark Man gets fucked up, doesn't he? You know, so like apart from Spider-Man, I think pretty much every Sam Raimi film, something mean-spirited happens.
Out of his hands, but still, you've still got like Uncle Ben or
Uncle
like
Ben.
Like,
yeah, he got shot.
Normally, like always, his
16
life is just
times.
sad.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, I mean, what are your thoughts to kind of summarise as we kind of head to wrap up?
Well, it's interesting because, as I said to you before, we have our other feature, Must See Horror.
Yeah.
So I was thinking I already came in with my decision of where that came, but this isn't a Must See Horror. No. I thought it was on our list and it wasn't, so I'd mixed up our features in my head. So, you know, as I said, I do find that this film, and as I find with quite a few outside of maybe the original Evil Dead, that quite a lot of his films are structured and tonally a bit off. With Evil Dead, you kind of got a reason for that, and Spider-Man had certain things, but there are quite a few of his films that I've seen that I feel they were off, including all the way up to the new Doctor Strange, which I felt was very all over the place. So it couldn't make its mind out about what it wanted to be, and this is kind of what I think this is. It can't make its mind whether it wants to be a serious, straightforward horror or whether it wants to be a corny, goofy Evil Dead style. And it starts to push to the point where it is like Evil Dead universe, where I could almost believe like this would be in the same world.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, but only because of the horror parts of it. The character stuff doesn't match up at all. And I do find that they're quite like, although you go through certain journey, and I find there are certain character moments that are quite good. Overall, I generally find the characters quite bland in the film, and I just couldn't quite, as I said, it has real, like, we go into the horror bits and it goes up, but apart from that, it's quite a big dip. Yeah, it's a drag. It literally is a drag, and and that's kind of why I'm summarising, and that's why I was going to say it would not have made my top 100 list, because I just don't think it's not peak Raimi. No, it's not. And this film has got like a 94 on Rotten Tomatoes. It's highly rated. Yeah, and I do, and I get the Raimi stuff is really cool. And as a PG-13 horror, then actually this is above. For one that doesn't actually, the one that pushes the boundaries and doesn't actually go into full-on, what you'd call like full-on gore and things like that at points, is to be applauded. It's that he's managed to pull it off. But it also doesn't mean that I find it to be one of his most enjoyable. And it's not one that I just don't think I would revisit it that much. I just don't think there's enough enjoyability and enough fun there to do it. I like watching the horror scenes, but I don't think the rest of it is enough to me to go, I'm going to put this and just chill with this film. It's just not that kind of horror to me.
Yeah, I think I kind of agree. I think it has its fun moments, particularly a lot of the earlier scenes around Sylvia, Ganesh, and all of the kind of the gross out moments are particularly a highlight of the film. I do think once it gets into the end of the second act, the third act, I find that it does start to drag a bit, and it almost jumps tonally. We get like for me a big shifting point is that scene in the I keep thinking it's the garage or wherever it is with the anvil. That's kind of, for me, is kind of where I get to a point where I'm like, I think the tone of this film's shifted. The characters aren't particularly memorable. I think it's a fun film. I remember really liking it when I first watched it, and I think each subsequent viewing, I think I've found it less and less enjoyable, and I just seem to find that there's a lot of the Raimi-isms in there that I do enjoy, but I think at times it's too straight-laced for the wackiness. And then the wackiness feels out of place when it's trying to be grounded and realistic. Yeah. And that's where I find my main problems with it are tone and pacing. Because, like I said, by the time I get 2/3 of the way through, before the seance, I'm kind of ready for the film to wrap up, and I've kind of lost a bit of interest. And it's never good when you've lost interest in a film.
No. I do think that whole Sandina kind of part might as well have just been cut, because it might as well have just got to the whole give it back to the, go to the bit about the passing it on, and then go through that consequence as the final thing, and then go to the, I think would have been much more interesting. I feel like I get the idea of why he wanted to do the whole seance thing to build into it. Yeah. But I just think by that point in the film, it just wasn't like it just didn't work with the rest of it anymore. And generally I don't think that Sam Raimi totally nailed down what he wanted this film to be.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it's just a bit off for me. So as we started with that, so yes, that is a film that has nothing to do with the title of ours, but we are talking about it because we are about two more episodes away from hitting our 100th episode. So we've got some other content coming your way. We're going to do a review of 100 episodes that's coming to you next week. And then we're also going to hit up for our 100th episode. Do we maybe we'll wait till next week. Listen next week to find out what our 100th episode feature film will be.
It's going to be an all-time classic. But as always, we hope that you've enjoyed the show. Please remember to check that you've hit that subscribe button so you can get the episodes as soon as they're released. And please leave us a lovely review. It really does help us grow. Weirdly enough, our Suspiria episode got us into the top 50 TV and film history charts in Italy. And I think we're still knocking around in the 40s. So the Rome and Italy conquest is still going strong. Just remember to hit that subscribe button. Come and let us know your thoughts on Drag Me to Hell. You can find us on TikTok, Instagram and Twitter at CMTH Podcast. And we will see you next week. Don't go pissing off old gypsy women. Get cursed. Goodbye.